Fire. Fire. Make some noise because every single one of y'all is making a change. Make some noise for yourself real quick. If you know this song, sing it with me. Don't be shy. It's okay. Come on. I was born by the river. Somebody sing it with me. 3 people. In a little tea. You know, just like the river I've been running. Do me a favor. Tell your best friend and sing it. You got it. Come on. It's been a long what? A long time coming. Come on, but I know, yeah, a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. I've been thinking for myself for a while. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause we don't know what's up there beyond. Rock your shaking that your next neighbor. Come on, it's been a come on, a long time. But I know, yeah, a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Let me tell you something that happened last week. So I go to the movies, then I go downtown, and all I keep hearing is, boy, what? Somebody know? Come on, don't hang around. It's been a long, come on, a long time coming. I know, yeah, it's gonna go. Oh, yes it will. Oh, yeah. So I go to my brother, and I say 3 words to my brother. What do I say? Help me. Y'all thought I forgot about y'all. I did. And guess what? Then he winds up what? Winds up knocking me. Oh, where? Somebody know where? Back down on my knees. Oh, now there's been times when I thought I wasn't gonna last too long. But right now I feel like we're to what? To carry on. You gotta come on. It's been a long what? A long. But I know. A change gonna come. Oh what? Oh yes it will. Make some noise for yourself. You did a great job. Y'all too shy and humble. Make some noise for yourself because you did a great job. Fire. Do me a favor. Somebody say, oh. Say, yeah. Y'all look amazing. Make some noise for yourself. Y'all got amazing outfits. Rainbow push. We got Yusuf over here with his awesome suit. Make some noise for Yusuf. Come on. Do me a favor. Matter of fact, let me check in. If you love Rainbow Push, make some noise. If you love Rainbow
Hey, Zion.
I think I only seen like 2 people who clap. I said, if you love Rainbow Push, make some noise. If you love Rainbow. Okay, let's try this out. This song is called Make It Through. Let's go. Come on. You live in Chicago, got us in your favor. I'ma hold it down like call me an anchor. Think about my problems, deal with it later. Focus on my family and stack up all this paper. I am an emperor, God in the making. Every time I wake up, it's a celebration. Every time I wake up, it's a sort of fun. I'm just trying to get it right. We're trying to get some sleep at night and trying to get some peace of mind. We're holding on our peace of mind. We're trying to make it through. We don't know what we're gonna do, but I know we gon'. If you know you're a champion this year, put your hands up. Come on. Somebody say that we'll make it. Come on. You got it. I don't care what your situation. You're gonna overcome. show love. It might just cost a little just to show up. But we gon' need each other when we grow up. And we gon' need each other like a big toe. Brother got my paddle and some big boat. And we coming in like a big show. We do it for the city like we need love. I'm just trying to get it right. Cause we're trying to get some sleep at night. And trying to get some peace of mind. We're holding on us. Come on. Nah, 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 nah. I'm just trying to make it through. We don't know what we're gonna. I know we gon' all the champions of 2026. Put your hands up, don't be shy. Somebody say that we gon' make it up. Hey, hey, hey. You got it, you got it, you got it, you got it. Come on, cause you got it. I don't care what your situation is. I don't care if 50 people doubted you. You got it this year. Whatever you plan out this year, you got this. I need you to encourage your neighbor. Look to your neighbor real quick and say these two words. Say this. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Look at somebody else. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. One last time, if you really believe it, put your hands on it. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Put your hands up. You got it. I don't care what your situation is. I don't care how cloudy it may be, but you got this. Do me one last favor. Do me one last favor. If you really believe in yourself this year, put your hands up and say this. Say, rain down the road. Let's sing it. Say, oh, baby. Rain down the road. Let's sing it. Look at your best friend, say these two words. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. I need you to do me a favor. Make some noise for your best friend because they're gonna achieve every goal despite the calamity, the nonsense that make way. They're gonna achieve their goals. Y'all too quiet. I said make some noise for your neighbor because they're gonna overcome. I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you so much. My name is Zion Ali. I appreciate y'all so much. God bless y'all.
Give Zion Ali a big hand. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please stand and welcome our President and CEO, Yusef Jackson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for your body and your presence being here. I know we've been impacted significantly by the weather. There's another storm system coming through, and I think in a couple of hours, maybe it'll spare us here. We're for sure in a safe place, but let's be careful and be mindful of the conditions that people are traveling through. We've lost a lot of people coming in from New York and Washington because the planes have been canceled in the airline. I think the airport was closed for a while as well. We've lost some people in neighborhoods with power outages and with some trees down. So be careful out there on the road. As we begin this year's conference, I can't think of a more fitting conversation than the one we're about to have. Our theme this year, as I said this morning, is fulfilling the American promise, and that requires us to wrestle honestly with a simple but profound question. What does Independence Day mean in America today? As our nation approaches its 250th anniversary, we have so much to celebrate. An American experiment that has expanded freedom and opportunity for millions. We've been a beacon to the world at times. Generations of Americans have sacrificed, organized, marched, voted, and served to move this country closer to its ideals. But we also have to be honest about the gap that has often existed between our founding premises and our lived reality. Frederick Douglass famously asked, "What is 4th of July to the slave?" In other words, what does the 4th of July mean to the disenfranchised, to the new immigrant, to the disrespected, to the locked out? He challenged America to confront its contradiction between the stated ideals and the exclusion of entire communities from rights and freedoms that we are supposed to celebrate. And that challenge did not end with Frederick Douglass. Throughout our history, many Americans have participated in this country, contributed to this country, fought for this country, believed in this country while not always experiencing its opportunities, its prosperity, its protections, the same way as others. But we've never lost hope or faith in the promise of America. The objective of the civil rights movement was not to close America down and to burn it down. It was to open up opportunity and force the country to confront the irony between the words written on the document and how we lived in practice. That discrimination based on race, gender, religion, and background. Some of it's structural, systems that determine who has access to quality schools, economic opportunity, health care, housing, and political power. Otherwise, outright racist, outright sexist, outright systemically exclusive. Yet the purpose of this conversation is to ask, how do we close the gap between promise and reality? How do we keep hope alive? How do we build a country where liberty, opportunity, and justice are not just aspirations for some, but lived experiences for all? And what responsibility does each generation have in moving us closer to that goal? Those are the questions we'll explore this afternoon with an extraordinary group of leaders whose experiences span generations, movements, and perspectives. I'm honored to welcome them to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome renowned author, pastor, and professor, Reverend Michael Eric Dyson. Please welcome former Biden administration political appointee, Progressive Democrats of America, Lily Greenberg Call. Please welcome President and founder of the Transformative Justice Coalition, Attorney Barbara Arnwine. And please welcome
Please welcome to the stage Chief Hoskins from the Cherokee Nation. And you're welcome to take your seats. All right, I don't know how we want to start this thing off. This is such an important thing. We think about the different backgrounds we have represented here, and all asking and answering the same question because we're all 100% and truly uniquely American. And that's what binds us more so than some of the external realities that we face, leading us, keeping us looking different. I have a question for everybody. As we prepare to celebrate America's 250th birthday, I'd like to begin with a simple but profound question. What is the American promise? Who has access to it? And what remains unfinished? Michael Eric Dyson.
First of all, what an honor it is to be here with these distinguished panelists and the great use of Jackson stepping into the gap to forward his father's and mother's vision. And I see the Reverend Dr. Professor Jacqueline Jackson out here in the audience. Just want to give her some love as well. The essential American promise is for the uninhibited ability of ordinary citizens to engage in acts of conscience and government that allow them to build a democracy without the suppression of speech or the denial of the opportunity to disagree with their government. And so for me, the promise is to fulfill the justice, the freedom, the equality, and especially the democracy that is betokened in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and for that matter, even the Federalist Papers.
Did you say betoken?
Yes, sir, betoken.
Betoken.
Right? Betoken in there. But it could be token for us, for sure. So for me, that promise has always been an ideal. You know, the great poet T.S. Eliot said, between the ideal and the reality falls the shadow. And so we have been living as shadowed people, especially now with the suppression of free speech, with the autocracy of this inveterate ninnyhammer who occupies space in Washington, D.C., denying at every turn the freedom of expression and the ability for ordinary citizens to come together. So 250 years later, I think people of color and other minoritized populations, think about it. At the beginning of this democracy, most people, forget color, could not vote. Most men couldn't vote, most women couldn't vote, most ordinary citizens could not vote. It was only by chipping away at the architecture of denial that we were able to erect a serious foundation of true justice in America. So that's what we got to continue to do. And never forget this, I'll say this, never forget that as bad as it is now, it's been a lot worse than what we're facing, and we have to remember that.
Can you explain that part, Michael?
Well, look, think about it. Authoritarianism didn't begin with Mussolini. Fascism didn't begin in Europe, the European Empire. We are victims of fascism on the slave plantation. We were victims of authoritarianism on the slave plantation. Every argument made about the resurgence of fascism in our own time, denial of opportunity of freedom of speech, denial of freedom of assembly, criminalizing citizens for their desire to speak up, the inability to vote, the suppression of that vote, the strategic dismemberment of the body of black political destiny. We've been through that. In fact, before we had a civil rights bill, before we had a civil rights act, before we had a fair housing act. So we have to remember what we did before we got what we got in order to go back to those habits, dispositions, and thoughts in order to confront this orange apparition that we confront right now.
Lily, what does the American promise mean to you, and who has access to it, and what makes it unfulfilled?
Thank you, Yusuf, and thank you to everyone here, and it's such an honor to share a stage with this panel and to be in Chicago. It's only my third time in this beautiful city, so I know it's a little hot right now, but it's better than the winter, I hear. I think, to me, the American promise, it's similar to what you just said. It's the promise of self-governance, which was so radical at the time. And there is a huge gap between the promise on paper and then the system that was actually built to deliver it, which was built by white male landowners. As you pointed out, most people, unless you were in that very specific subset, had no access to the promise of self-governance. But it is something that so many people have seen in this country, and my family came here 3 generations ago. And my grandparents barely went to high school. And then, by luck of the draw, I was lucky enough to end up working for the President of the United States. And a lot of people in my community, the Jewish community, have had access to this American promise in a way that so many other folks in this country have not. And again, by luck and circumstances and decisions around who gets to be white and who gets to have proximity to power and all that. But, I believed in that promise enough because of the deep, possibility in it to go work for the federal government. Because I believed that the system is broken and flawed, but there was a kind of basic agreement that if you went and worked within it, you could change it. And that is what it means to be American. That's what makes this country different. And I found that that's true to some extent, but also not. And it's one of the reasons why I ended up leaving, because I went in and I realized there's so much has improved. And I was working for the first Indigenous cabinet secretary member ever in the history of this country, in the agency that removed Native people from their lands, which is, it was a true honor to get to see that experience of people working in the very system that harmed them. But it's also so limited because so many of the decisions built, in the system are still there about who is listened to and who gets to have a say and who gets to have a seat at the table. And that gap between what we say and what we actually do is so large. I it was not tenable for me anymore as a Jewish person as the genocide in Gaza unfolded, and I felt that I had to leave and speak my conscience and no longer let my identity be used to justify the destruction of another people. But I think so many people in this country feel that gap, and a lot of young people too, right? And my generation, I think we're done waiting for someone else. We're done saying we have to, follow all the steps and do all the things right and work within the system, and then we get to change it. I think we've realized we don't have a lot of time. And if we're gonna have a livable future and a vision, if we're gonna have a country that actually lives up to the ideals that we say we do, we've got to do something about that now, and we've got to break that system down now.
And so, Ms. Greenberg-Call, what's your obligation to other people, given that you've had this privilege?
I think, when I resigned, I thought a lot about what my grandparents would think, and I'm not, I would hope that they would understand, but you never know with older folks. But I do think they came to this country so that I could have the opportunities that I did, and when I left, I realized the point of having power and privilege and access to that is to be able to give it up or to use it, to sacrifice it in service of others. And I think the times we're living in right now are going to demand that all of us, and especially those with more privilege, take more risk than we're comfortable with, because fascism requires us to feel so scared for our own self and our own communities that we're willing to turn our heads when something bad is happening to our neighbor. And my people know that, and we've unfortunately, that lesson we have not processed that trauma enough to stop it from happening again or not repeat it ourselves. But I think our obligation as those with the ability, whether it's our skin color, our class, or whatever positioning we have, our access to power, if you don't flip some of those tables sometimes when you're there, that's not the point. That's not the point.
I want to say thank you, Lily. Give her a round of applause. What you may not know about Lily is that she worked on Biden's 2020 election campaign, and she worked in the White House. What an honor it is to serve your country in the White House. So she's quite a special young lady to be able to be selected to work in the White House. And she resigned in 2024 under her own volition to protest our government's position on Gaza. And so we can talk about this if you want to, but the pressure from her own community, the pressure from her family should not be lost on us today for the integrity move that she made to protest in that sense. Give Lily a round of applause. Chief Hoskin is the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, the largest tribe in the United States with more than 450,000 citizens. He is also a board member of the Rainbow Push Coalition. He appointed the tribe's first delegate to the U.S. Congress. As an advocate for equality and opportunities, elevated the voices of women and children and their safety within the Cherokee Nation reservation. I'm curious, Chief Hoskin, what does the 4th of July mean to you?
Well, thank you. First of all, it's an honor and a privilege to be with you all today. And it's also an honor and a privilege to have brought someone with me who doesn't get a chance to travel with me too often. I'd just like to take a point of privilege to introduce my daughter, the first daughter of the Cherokee Nation, Jasmine Hoskin. That's usually the response back home, too. More cheers for her than her father. But I appreciate the warm welcome. So it is something that for Native peoples is a great challenge to think about this question. But I think in the final analysis for all of us as Americans, it does seem to me that what it means is the country was supposed to be founded on our ability to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but it's got to be all of us. and it can't be a zero-sum game where somebody gets something and that means somebody loses. We have to figure out in this American experiment how we can all achieve that measure of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And that's got to mean some economic justice in this country, and it's got to be some racial equality in the country. For Native peoples, one of the ways we look at it is long before many Europeans got lost and believed they discovered someone, we were governing ourselves just fine. And long before anyone ever invented the United States of America or a system of fair governance, we had our systems. And the Cherokee people have found ourselves in different parts of the country, not by choice, but before there was a state of Georgia, we lived there. Before anyone ever created the state of Oklahoma, we had been pushed across the country, lost a quarter of our population along the Trail of Tears, and then they imposed the state of Oklahoma over us.
Teach, teach, teach.
So this may shock this audience, but there was once a president of the United States who would thumb his nose at federal court orders and insist that the Cherokee people be pushed across the United States. Can you imagine that the commander-in-chief might ignore a federal court order? That happened in this country. And the result was the result that you will always get, which is a measure of injustice that erodes that idea that we ought to be pursuing together life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But here we are in 2026, and we've got a lot of work to do.
Yes.
But it seems to me that the same spirit that said we'll form a more perfect union, and my goodness, is that important to remember. They didn't say a perfect union, a more perfect union. We got to remember that union started out with a democracy that gave us tools to vote, but not all of us. Native Americans wouldn't become citizens until 1924 fully. The same tools that gave us some democracy gave us the tools to gerrymander and to decide who got what sort of representation. Those things are still hanging over us today, but those things are resolvable. But it seems to me the focus has to be all of us pursuing happiness. And that's a collective effort. It can't be an individual effort. It can't be whoever is fastest. It can't be whoever gets to start at the starting line while many others are still way behind and still shackled in many ways. And so for Native Americans, the additional measure of justice is recognition of a people that were here before anyone ever heard of the United States being recognized as sovereigns.
Attorney Arn Wine is the president and founder of the Transformative Justice Coalition. She's been advocating for voting rights nationwide. There was a chance at the beginning of the Revolutionary War that they thought if we had won and joined the right party, we'd be set free. Yet we were caught into the Constitution as 3/5 of a human, subject to slave states and free states. Then we won our freedom through the Civil War in 1865 and 14th Amendment 1868, 1870. Black men got the right to vote. In 1877, the Democrats cut a deal with the Republicans and took the troops out of the South. And then we had Plessy versus Ferguson. And then we have a long nadir till 54 and 64 and 65. We've been marching, Attorney Arn Wine. We've been going to the Capitol in 63. We went for the commemoration in 83. We've done the Million Man March, registering prisoners. We've been trying to change laws. We've had the King's marches. We're tired. It seems like every time we build this foundation, something else knocks it back. And so you, who've been deep on the forefront of voting rights and expansion of voter protections, on the forefront of this fight all your life, what do you tell young people today after they've seen Calais happen, after they've seen Shelby happen, and all the work that we've done, not all of it, but a significant component of the infrastructure we built is being dismantled in a matter of days?
Thank you for that question. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Yusef Jackson, for everything, for all this incredible leadership. And I would be so remiss if I didn't give a shout out of love to one Jackie Jackson. because of her brilliance and everything. And Reverend Jeanette Wilson, thank you, my dear, for all that you do. And I must, before I make any comment, recognize my co-leader, Darryl Jones, Attorney Jones of the Transformative Justice Coalition. All right, first of all, let's start with a proposition that I heard a young brother say the other day, and I just loved it. I said, woo, I got to use that. And what he said was, when you talk about 250 years, the first thing you should be saying as a progressive or a black person or a person of color is the math ain't mathing. Okay, the math ain't mathing. And what he pointed out very eloquently was to think about that the only time that African Americans were universally, quote, entitled to vote was from the period 1870, right? You can go ahead and say, 1865, and you can carry it up to the Hayes-Tilden Compromise of 1877. You get 12 years at the max. Then you have the drought, right? And you have the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We've only had that act for what? 61 years. Folks, 61 plus 12 don't add up to 250. The math ain't mathing. So we have to be very clear when we speak to everyone about that reality. When I first went to Washington, I spent the first years of my career there at the Lawyers Committee, fighting to reverse some horrible Supreme Court cases. We were able to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1991. We were able to pass, during that whole period, what became the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. We were able to pass, in 2006, the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act. So my first years were not years of just being on the defense. They were years of active attack and advancement and expansion of our rights. In the last years, we really have seen since 2010 the most regression in our politics. Now, one thing I love that Harry Edwards said recently, that no movement can succeed if it doesn't have a fundamental political consciousness to it. That if you don't have ingrained within the people the understanding of what the fight really is about. The fight's not just about one bad Supreme Court, the Roberts Majority 6. They're bad now. They some evil folks. And we got to be conscious of that. But this is a more than 50 years, probably since the founding of this country, a plan to enshrine white supremacy. That is what it has been, white patriarchal capitalistic supremacy. And we got to understand that. And if we don't, then we fall into the trap of people saying, why do we still have the march? We got to march because we got to breathe. You don't say, why am I still breathing? You understand it's fundamental to your ability to focus and to move forth as a human being in this society, in this world. You understand that you never say, oh, we got all the art we ever needed. You love every time a new artist comes along. Be it a singer, be it a painter, be whatever the art might be. You celebrate it. The same is true of social activism. Some people say that activism actually is spiritual, that its roots are centered in a moral compass that points always where? Towards justice. And that is something, Yusef, in your question, that I would point out to young people, as we train transformative justice. We train hundreds of young people every year to be racial justice, voting rights advocates. And what I would say, the biggest mistake movements make all the time is that we want to parade young people around, but we don't want to invest in them. Deeply invest in them. Invest in their knowledge base. Invest in their understanding. And without that kind of constant investment and pouring back into each and every one, then we don't move forward. So I am so happy when I see a Cameron Barnes and recognize what Reverend Jackson poured into him, when I see all of these beautiful young people, it is our obligation to embrace them, lift them up, love on them. Thank you.
So, Dr. Arnwine, you have hope.
Yes.
I'm going to take the angle that I don't have hope right now because I'm tired. I'm tired because we keep at it and we keep at it. We've built so much, and it just seems like in 6 months, he destroyed what we built. Reverend Michael Eric Dyson, the professor, a writer, a media personality, 25 books, 7 New York Times bestsellers. I have to ask you, Doc, you studied law, you studied theology, you've examined America's contradictions, you've made them clear to us, enumerated them to us. You know better than most that every generation has believed it was living through a defining struggle for justice. My dad has every 4 years was the most important election you could ever live through. And you look where we are today with deep political divisions, persistent inequality, renewed challenges to civil rights. Are we ever going to overcome these obstacles, or are we just climbing a slippery slope? How do you prevent me from being nihilistic?
One of the inspirations for your father was a man named Howard Thurman. And Howard Thurman said, refuse the temptation to scale down your dreams to the level of the event, which is your immediate experience, right? Refuse the temptation to scale down your dreams to the event, which is your immediate experience. He said, you got a choice. You can be a prisoner of the event, or you can be a prisoner of hope. I choose to be a prisoner of hope. He also said that our slave foreparents imagined the world, but couldn't really imagine what we are today, but they imagined deeply enough to produce us in the womb of their expectation. So if we hear the brilliance of this panel, the indigenous people who were raped and pillaged and plundered, who were eviscerated with executive orders, who were trounced upon by presidents without conscience. If we listen to Reverend Dr. Arnwine in preaching about what the legal infrastructure has done to perpetuate legacies of inequality, and Sister Lily speaking about the complicity in genocide and our need to resist that, we don't have the privilege of cynicism.
Go ahead.
Mostly people whose backs are against the wall are the very ones who have more hope than the experts, than the prophets and the naysayers. So I turn to everyday, ordinary people who refuse to give up. And as I said before, let me be more explicit now. This ain't the worst we done seen. They used to rape us without legal redress or moral compunction. Castration was the order of the day. Lynching occurred daily. The burning of our schools, the refusal to acknowledge our humanity, the pillaging and plundering of our communities. So we have to remember that we serve a force that is deeper than what we see. They might be anti-DEI. They want it to DIE. But we know that they ain't GOD. So as a result of that, what we have to do is to understand that we have a faith. Is it going to work? See, this one you need your spare tire. You don't need no spare tire when your car working. But when the car starts breaking down and the flat comes, you need a spare tire. Where is your spare tire? And I think at the end of the day, it is necessary for us to invest in a hope that is a practice, not an ideal, not an abstraction, but a practice. We're facing white evangelical piety, black fundamentalist Christian belief that is complicitous with that. We got people who are out here talking about God as if God was interested and invested in theologies of not liberation, but leisure. We go on the internet, we go on Instagram, we see incredible preoccupation with narcissistic self-advance. So what we got to do in order to maintain that hope is to recognize we done been here before, we have succeeded in the past, the same God we served then will continue to see us through now, and the same intelligence and the same hope and the same desire that we had then will push us forward, especially when we got black women saving the nation once again.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Michael. Lillie Greenberg Call has kind of lived some of that. Her back was not against the wall. She was working and following a wonderful career trajectory and had the option to stay within her privilege. And this panel is about the promise of America and the responsibility that generations have to fulfill it. And so as you made those consequential decisions to live in your conscience and consciousness, what can you teach us about the personal sacrifice we might all have to be making together for this dream and this promise called America?
Well, you know, the thing I learned, and I'm young, but I was younger when I resigned, and I don't know how fully developed my frontal lobe was, but I think it needed to be a little loose to make a decision like that in some ways. I didn't, no kids, no mortgage. I was like, I can do this without a plan, you know, without a job lined up. But in that moment, I learned that principles aren't really principles when they're free. They're principles when they're tested. When something is on the line, then you decide. Then you learn what your principles really are. And
Lillie, they may not know that you got beat up for what you did.
Well, not physically, thank God. But yeah, I mean, I got some threats for sure in my inbox. No, I mean it. You know, my tradition, my spiritual tradition. I was raised very embedded in the Jewish community. I spent my whole life in Jewish school. I culturally, religiously, but it was, to me, being Jewish and the fundamental heart of it is about how to live a good life when you don't know what's going to come next, because that has been the experience of my people really until our time in the United States in the last 100 years, really. An experience of continued question and continued instability and an uncertainty of, can we stay here? Will we have to leave? It's very destabilizing, but you have to learn how to live a good life. And when you don't know what's coming next, you learn really quickly that, you know, we don't know if there's heaven or hell. No one's really sure, but we know we got to build the world here as if it's the world to come. And so there's these fundamental principles that I was taught about, you know, tikkun olam, repairing the world, this concept of pikuach nefesh, that you can break any law if it means saving a life, any Jewish law. No law, Jewish, you know, secular, whatever, is more important than saving a life. There's a principle of B'Tselem Elohim, that every human being has the spark of God inside them. And that's what I learned in my 25 years of Jewish education. And so even before I came to the White House, I was grappling with, well, what I'm seeing happen in Israel to Palestinians goes against every single thing I was taught of what it means to be Jewish. And if I wouldn't accept that treatment for me and my family, then, or for people here in this country, and I'd spent a lot of my, career at that point fighting for a more multiracial democracy here at home, why am I accepting something that's the opposite of that with our tax dollars and in the name of my community's safety? And, resigning, of course, was, in many ways it was scary and it was stressful, but I felt so deeply in the spirit of Moses and of so many of our prophets who stood in Pharaoh's hall and chose to speak truth to power even when he didn't have to, right? Moses came from the privilege. Once he was shown his truth about his origin, he didn't have to leave. He didn't have to take on this mantle of fighting for his people. He could have closed his eyes and, I'm sure God would have chased him down, but he could have chosen to stay in that. But that's not what it means to be living, in your full humanity. And as much as the challenges that I face, they're really minor compared to what most people in this country experience every day. And of course, everybody, every Palestinian experiencing genocide and apartheid in Palestine. But I also learned, solidarity is not altruistic. It's not just for the other person. It is also selfish because we have accepted this trade-off in this country and in Western society in general, that we have to hoard, we have to choose our people, we have to choose to only, there's this zero-sumness that the chief spoke of that I found in my work with indigenous people. It does not exist in y'all's culture in the same way that it does ours. And I do think when the Europeans came here, they saw something that held such a mirror up to their own brokenness that they were so scared of it, and that was I see that as a reason why there was so much effort to eradicate indigenous people. But, we don't have to make that trade-off anymore, and especially not in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, because what happens to you happens to me. And we know that, and it's not just spiritual, it's economic too, it's practical. We see when we send $25 billion to go bomb schoolgirls in Iran and continue to kill people across the Middle East, that's money that we don't have here in our communities for roads, for healthcare, for violence prevention, for elder care and child care. And then we look to other countries who have less resources than us but still manage to provide for all their people a basic standard of living. And I think my generation is the first generation where the American dream, it's a myth. We are not gonna get even the promise of maybe, if you do a bunch of things right, you can have some economic stability. You may have other things working against you, race and gender, but you can make enough money and live a good life. Most people under 30, there's no promise of that. No promise of that whatsoever. And so we've realized that we have to, no matter what we have, I grew up in a community where most people, I think, had a lot, but felt more in common with a billionaire than their neighbor who was, working class. And I think a lot of those people, even those people in privileged positions, have started to realize, hold on a second, there is a huge gap.
Yes.
And there are a few people who are making this earth untenable for human life at the cost of everybody else, and we don't have to accept that anymore. And I think we're ready to step into a new way of being, even if it's going to be hard, and even if a lot of people are going to have to work together who maybe don't agree on a lot of things, but if we can agree on this, that's the first step towards something new.
Thank you. All right, listen, we're going to be, I got some good stuff for you, but you got to answer within a framework and a time, okay? All right, so we got to, Dr. Arnwine, Chief, thinking about, Lily resigned and took a lot of heat from her family and from the government and from the country. She still is at one level. But you have generational years of blood. And you still have not found the measure of justice that considers it to be an equal justice situation for your people. How do you move beyond that and build coalition to a place where we can sustain the democracy that we need to make it a better place for all people?
Well, thank you. The great challenge that we have in the country is there is a rapid unraveling of the social compact that has held us together and held the most promise for progress. The social compact that I think this audience, in your heart, you have, is a concept in Cherokee called Gadugi. Gadugi is the Cherokee word for working together. Such a simple concept, but it's the concept that after our removal, when we lost a quarter of our population, were decimated economically, were ripped apart politically, our ancestors had to decide whether to give in to what divided them or to lean into what united them. And what united them was the generation coming up. So we took 70 cents of every dollar and put it into education. We invested back in democracy and the rule of law, even though it let us down in this country because America forgot it when it came to the Cherokees. And so what I think we have to do is build a coalition that's committed to restoring the social compact, and it really all rests on a generation that has the most at stake and the least control, and that is people in my daughter's generation. And we have to think about this. There has been generations of young lawyers and bureaucrats and advocates that have helped unwind this social compact. We've got millions of young people who can help us wind it back up, but we got to get behind them. That's one thing. The other thing, briefly, is there is a rapid whitewashing of history in this country so that that generation coming up doesn't remember where they came from. And so we have to have an antidote to federal policy that says take signs off public memorials and national parks because it might make somebody look bad. Well, sometimes Andrew Jackson has to look bad. And so we've got to tell the truth, and we can all have a role in that.
I want you to answer that too, Dr. Arnwine, because you build coalitions all around the country. And you run into so many people who don't want to expand opportunities to register to vote and to mobilize. How do you build coalition with them so they understand that democracy is participatory for everybody?
Thank you. First, I just want to point out that all of us on this panel, even though we hadn't spoken with each other prior to the panel, every one of us has lifted up the beauty of the ancestors and their fight, and that without them, none of us would be here. We have to realize that one day we're all going to be ancestors. And the question is, what do we leave behind? And how do we pave the road to make it even better for those who come after us? So, one thing that we're doing right now, because I don't have to talk about this theoretically, I don't have to talk about this ideologically, we are right now working on John Lewis, Good Trouble Lives On. Right now. That is going to be July 17th through the 19th, a national weekend of action. Because when they bring new mess to us, we got to have a new offense where we bring and where we go and we make the change that's going to really count. What's going to count? What's going to count? It's going to count if we are able to do a couple of things. One is that we must make sure that every eligible voter that we know is registered to vote and is voting. We got to make sure. People, think about it. In 2024, one of the worst statistics that nobody talks about is that of the people who voted, and I'm just talking about stats here, of the people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020, in 2024, it's estimated that 9+ million of those people sat home. Sat home. The skippers, as people call them.
Dry bones.
Your dad used to call them rocks.
Laying around.
You know, the rocks. He used to talk about them rocks that don't vote, that don't register. We got to take those rocks and get them from laying on the ground and throw them at the system of injustice. We got to make sure that we are activating every single person. So what's happening with John Lewis, Good Trouble Lives On, is that it's a convergence. It's what I call movement convergence.
Come on now.
So you're bringing out the No Kings people. You're bringing out the African American All roads lead to the South. Freedom Summer, people. You're bringing out all the Mayday Strong Coalition. You're bringing out all of these movements into one formation to make the change we must have.
Yes, yes.
It's not going to be left to one organization, one leader. It's about all of us coming together in this moment and opening up the walls, the gates for another moment of resurgence of our vision. This country has always been caught in a clash of visions, a clash of those who always wanted perpetual white supremacy, perpetual domination of women, perpetual poverty. But it's always been another crew that said, no, we will never rest until we have a inclusive, representative, non-sexist, just multiracial democracy.
Yes.
That's what we must have.
Yes.
No rest until we
Give
get
it to
there.
her.
No rest until we get there.
What I've learned here is, one, we got to keep our hope and our faith. And we have to keep our ability to fight. And what Pete Buttigieg told us was, what makes you think you don't have to fight?
Right.
Every generation before you has had to fight, and now you have to fight too. I'm going to give my last question before I bring on Reverend Moss to give us what the 4th of July means from this perspective. If we're sitting here on the America's 275th birthday, 25 years from now, what would you hope future generations could say about how we responded to this era? You say it's began in the 2010s, so it's not a moment, it's an era. And what would it mean for us to truly fulfill the American promise? You get 2 words in a sentence or 2 before Reverend Moss. Michael Eric Dyson, if you could do that.
Keep hope alive. And, I asked Reverend Jackson once, how is it that you at 25, 26 years old got into the inner circle of Martin Luther King Jr.? And he said to me, homeboy, the line to go die with him wasn't long. Right? So we have to remember that sacrifice is the nature of our existence, the price we pay for the perpetuation of our own ancestral legacy and for what we're doing now. I see a lot of young people, I'm not my ancestors. I'll put hands on you. First of all, you don't know your history. You don't even know Robert Williams, Negroes with Guns. You don't know what people were doing. But they didn't put it on the internet. They did not put it on social media. They did the work.
Yes,
You've got to make up your mind. Do you want the commercial or the product? We need to focus on the product itself.
All right now. Lily.
If I see myself in others, then who can I harm? I think we got to be really, really angry at the systems, but love people. Everybody. And we got to hold both of those things at the same time, because we're constantly told everything's black or white, good or evil, but duality is the nature of our existence, and if we can't embrace that, we're not gonna, I don't know what we'll look like at 275.
On America's 275th birthday, what would you hope future generations could say about how we responded to this moment, Dr. Arnwine?
I pray that they'll be able to say, they fought. They fought, and they changed it. They fought, and they built a new America. They fought, and they made it possible for me to sit here today and be proud. That's what I want them to say. I want them to have to understand that we fought like Harriet, that we loved like Martin, that we had the courage and boldness of Malcolm, that we never stopped walking in the legacy that was given to us. That's what I want them to say.
Chief Hoskin?
Well, I hope in 25 years they look back and say that we recaptured the idea that democracy really is about working together. Democracy's not a race. Democracy's not to see who can win the prize or get the most gold. It's whether we all are working together. And I mentioned the word Gadugi a while ago, and I hope that becomes more ingrained in the public's consciousness, because democracy does take work together across races, across classes, across regions, not staying, as you mentioned, just on social media, but getting out and doing the real work. And I think if we're working together, we can restore the social compact. And I think if we stay in an every man for himself society, then we are unfortunately destined to see more of this. But I think that there's a real stirring in the country, and I'm proud to be a part of it as Chief of the Cherokee Nation.
Thank you, Chief. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. We'll be closed out by our preacher, Reverend Otis Moss. After that, you'll sit back down. Don't leave me. Reverend Moss has got to answer the question. Fulfilling the American promise, we wrestle with a profound question, Reverend Moss. What does Independence Day mean in America today? Give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much. My brother Yusef, he has inherited the gene of his father. When he sees somebody, he says, come up here and say something right now. And so the question that he asked me is in reference to the moment of, quote unquote, America's independence. So I just want to, for the next 5 minutes, that's all I need, is just 5 minutes, and I just want to break some things down. So just give me 5 minutes, and I'll break it down. We begin with 1619, when people of African descent arrived here on the shores, and that was the moment of an encounter, when people were operating out of a myth known as Manifest Destiny. But that is not what I want to speak about. I want to speak about that there are 3 reconstructions. When we first talk about 1776, that was not the Reconstruction, that Declaration of Independence, that ability for people of European descent. They thought that they had landed in a land that was theirs, but it was not. And they were attempting to, quote unquote, become independent, but actually colonizers. We talk about the first Reconstruction after the Civil War. After the Civil War is the moment where we saw the expansion of the American Democratic Project, where you had people of African descent who were moving into spaces such as the Senate and also to the Congress. But something happened in 1877. So from 1976 to 1877, something was going on in America. It was functioning in a way that did not see people who were of African descent, those who were not European. But then we have what is known as a compromise that happens, that shifts the Reconstruction in the South so that Confederate soldiers, Confederate landowners could take power once again. And that begins what we call the Second Reconstruction. Actually, what we call the modern civil rights or human rights movement begins in that moment in 1877 all the way to 1965. You have the movement of what we today would call the civil rights movement. Second Reconstruction. First Reconstruction is after the Confederate period where they are defeated, but the Second Reconstruction happens up to 1965. Now we are in the period of the Third Reconstruction. The Third Reconstruction is to fulfill America's promise. But know this, that those who are in opposition to the Third Reconstruction are individuals that witnessed what happened in the Second Reconstruction. Let me break it down this way, that after 1965, there was a movement of those who were corporate entities that recognized that there was power when black and brown people got together and began to organize. In 1973, there was a particular wealthy individual who inherited the money from the Coors family and then put money into what we call the Heritage Foundation. by putting money into the Heritage Foundation, they recognize that when black and brown people get together, something happens in America. America will begin to live out and move toward this idea of being a republic that will include everyone. So from 1973 to today, the Heritage Foundation has been working to put forth policy in order to move us back prior to any Reconstruction. But not only with the Heritage Foundation, you then have the Federalist Society. The Federalist Society is picking judges to ensure that they function with a Confederate residue as they are working on their particular ideas about the judiciary in America. The Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. So what is our role? Our role is not just voting, our role is also organizing. Our role is not just voting, but our role is also building coalitions together. Our role is not just voting, but also understanding history. Other communities put money together to form think tanks to lay out what the future will be. We are living out the vision, a 1973 vision. Project 2025 is a 1973 vision to move America back prior to the first Reconstruction. And it is our responsibility to take a page, let me say it this way, take a page out of the Knicks and the Spurs. I know this sounds strange right now, but take a page out of the Knicks and the Spurs. Let me break it down this way. There was a gentleman who was living in temporary housing in Washington, D.C. by the name of, I will not mention his name, shows up to New York and falls asleep during the game. But wait a minute, he is falling asleep during a game that actually is presenting a vision of America he's trying to destroy. Because when you look at the San Antonio Spurs, that organization is centered around bringing in immigrants, knowing that if you have a diversity of people behind the scenes and on the floor, you can win. But wait a minute, also with the Knicks, you've got a diversity of people from Nigerian to Dominican to New York who are doing the work. And here is a person who is asleep in the midst of the frame of what America needs to become. And so what I'm trying to tell you right now, whether you're a Spurs fan or a Knicks fan, if we can lay things out the way they are doing it on the floor, we can also move to our third Reconstruction. There may be an alien on the floor. Wait a minute, Victor Wimby, a French African who is on the floor, or there may be a Dominican who is on the floor by the name of Cat. But yet, when we bring together all of the diversity and the gifts, guess what? The ones sleeping up in the suites cannot handle what's going to happen on the floor. So I'm here to let you know right now, we've got to do some organizing, pass the ball, whether that ball is in Oklahoma, whether that ball is to our sisters, whether that ball is to whatever person in the community. We are going to begin to organize and do like Big Body Brunson. You got to use your crossover, pass to who's necessary, and if I got to tip it in the last second, I will do it, and I don't care who does it. My 5 minutes up. Peace. I'm out.
Nixon 5, baby. Nixon 5.
What I tell you, give it up for Reverend Moss. Give it up for Reverend Moss. Thank you so much. That concludes this section of the panel. Let's take some pictures up front. I would have done that myself, but I can't.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dyson, Lily Greenberg Call, Attorney Barbara Arnwine, and Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. Our next panel is the fight for economic justice. Moderated by Our next panel is the fight for economic justice, moderated by President and CEO of the Chicago Urban League, the Honorable Karen Freeman Wilson. Please welcome the President of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, Mr. Ashley Thomas III. Please welcome the CEO of Business Leadership Council, Ms. Kiana Barrett. Please welcome President and CEO of Property First, Jeremy Jordan.
Good afternoon. It is my distinct honor and privilege to greet you as we honor the legacy of Reverend Dr. Jesse Louis Jackson, and we build on that legacy with our new leader, Mr. Yusef Jackson. As we assemble here today, we are confronted with a reality that we may be the generation that leaves our young people worse off than we found them. But because we are here in a moment of creating solutions and problem solving, we are not satisfied with living down to that reality. And that is why we have assembled this panel today. We are going to talk about the fight for economic justice and what it takes for us to make things better. And I am so excited to be joined by this august panel. So let's jump right in. We know that Rainbow Push was founded on the reality that economic justice and civil rights are inseparable. And each of us represents a different version of that reality. I want to start with Mr. Thomas and ask you how NARAB is making that a reality in your work.
Yes, first of all, let me just say I'm honored to be able to be here with you all. The National Association of Real Estate Brokers was founded in 1947 on the core principle of democracy and housing. We are celebrating our 79th year as an association that continues to fight for building wealth in the black community through home ownership. The unfortunate part is that many years later, we're still fighting the same fight for economic justice when it comes to home ownership. We sit at a time where the black home ownership rate stands about 44%. The white home ownership rate stands at 74%. This is actually larger than it was prior to the Fair Housing Law of 1968. And so we're widening the gap in terms of home ownership, which also means we're widening the gap in terms of wealth. And so NARAB is very committed in terms of policy. I will tell you that policy is something that with a stroke of the pen, it affects millions of Americans daily. And so we are definitely on the forefront of looking at housing, home ownership, building wealth, how that impacts our community, what are the barriers that exist. The other thing that I'll say, and I know time is very limited, is we're very committed into heirs property rights and how these properties that we've accumulated throughout the years are being handed down to future generations. And right now we're seeing a mass wealth loss when we have to go to probate, when we have to go and argue about who is actually the rightful owner and whatnot. And so we're doing our part to make sure that wills are in place, trusts are in place, and protection is in place.
Absolutely. I want to stay with you for 1 minute. You all just did a bus tour. Talk about the symbolism of a bus tour through the communities and what you're trying to achieve through that mechanism.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, so it was a vision to make sure that we got on the bus and we drove about 2,200 miles. And I'll tell you, when I told the members of the association that this is what we're going to do, they said, are we really getting on a bus? And I think it was very important because this was about grassroots movement. And one thing that we learned through the civil rights movement that we need to start applying again today is that being together, we're more powerful. And so we have a lot of organizations, a lot of institutions, a lot of brilliant minds in here today, but we can't do it by ourselves. And so we have to begin to work together to get to the end goal. And so we did do an affordable home ownership tour. It doesn't matter if you're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Chicago, Illinois, New York. Everyone is struggling with affordability in terms of housing, whether it's rent or ownership. And so we really needed to get out and bring greater awareness into how we are actually getting to the end product. And what are the down payment assistance programs? What are the opportunities out there to actually buy a home? And so that's what we did. We're very excited about that, and we look forward to doing it next year through more of an HBCU circuit.
Thank you for that. Kiana, I'm going to come to you now. You're home as someone who grew up in Push, but who is now leading economic justice with the Business Leadership Council. Talk about that intersection between civil rights and economic justice.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you to all of my fellow Push family members that are in the audience. This is a full circle moment to be able to sit in the house that Reverend Jackson built and to be able to pay homage to the master classes that he administered upon us. As a proud graduate of Push University, as I frequently say, this is a pivotal moment for us to recognize not only the assignment, but the responsibility that each of us have. And so when I look across this auditorium and imagine those who are listening and paying homage to our new CEO, Yusef Jackson, for his receiving of the baton to move this forward. Reverend Jackson used to always say that it's never been a talent deficit. It's been more of an anemic opportunity environment for us. And so when we think about the civil rights movement, we are at the crossroads of really looking to make sure that there is increased economic mobility amongst our communities. We understand that exclusion, as we are seeing it today, which is very bold and unapologetic, is not episodic. And so as a result of that, Michael Eric Dyson once said that we've already been through what we've been brought to. And so we have to be very intentional, Mayor, about how we create systemic change. So at one point, our yesterday's barriers were about segregation and about legal dissemination and how we could address that. Today, we have to look at the lack of access to capital and investment, and the fact that that compromises our ability to be able to compete. When the level ground is fair and the rules are clear, we not only can compete, but we can win. And so the charge before us today is how do we not overemphasize the problem, but focus on the solution. So over these next 3 days, we need to be very intentional about how we are harnessing the collective power in this room. So I know that we're almost at Sunday. It's Friday Eve. So I want you to say something with me. Coalition is our currency. So it is imperative that we remind ourselves that in coalition, we are immensely capable of overcoming this season and making sure that the generation before us inherits a much greater and more sustainable environment to build upon.
I want to come back to that coalition point in a minute. Before I do, Jeremy, I want you to talk about, Kiana raised the notion of access to capital, which is critical for developing wealth because most businesses, most people in some form or fashion need access to capital. How do you approach that in your business? How do you approach that in the context of economic justice?
Thank you for that. And first I want to thank the Push family, the entire Jackson family and everyone, and thank you all for coming out. To your question, I think it's about extending opportunity. When you think about you have a business and you have business leaders and black business leaders, you have a responsibility to pay it forward. And I look at Property First, our company, we've provided over $50 million in subcontracting opportunity for black and minority and businesses, women-led businesses over the last 20 years. It's our responsibility to pass that opportunity or to pass that access on to others. And I'll challenge you to your point or to your comment about access to capital. I think that's important. Access to capital, access to contracts, that's very important, but also access to networks, access to rooms like this. Too many times people don't know rooms like this exist, and sometimes the thought leaders that are in this room or in rooms like this are far more valuable than any dollar or any contract one can receive. So yes, access to capital is important, but also access to networks. And yes, just because a door is open for you doesn't mean you have a seat at the table. And even when you have a seat at the table, doesn't mean you have a stake at what's being built. So I really want to push and emphasize on the access to networks and the access to thought leaders that are here in this room today. And of course, access to contracts and access to capital are important, but those two go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, because it takes us back to Kiana's statement.
Coalition, yeah.
Coalition
That's it.
Is our currency. Now, let's talk about that from the standpoint of reality for a minute, because sometimes it's hard for us to coalesce because we want to know who's doing what, leading the coalition. How do we address that question, Ashley, in a way where everybody wins?
You know, I think, I love that phrase. I'm going to actually take it from you, okay? I'll send you a check. But I think as we talk about coalition and how we actually do that, we got to go back and look at how it's been done in the past. And I think we already have the blueprint on how we've worked together, how we brought associations together. Just being here, we all represent different organizations, and the Push family was able to bring us together. And I think that that's very important and commendable to share the stage. We were talking backstage that after this is over, I have to catch a flight. Now, when I want to go to the airport, I might go this direction. You might go the other direction, but we'll end up at the airport together. And I think we have to be more focused on the process, not so much on the process, but the end goal. What is the end goal? What are we trying to accomplish out of this? You know, I think historically, if we go back from a home ownership standpoint, we have to look at the systems that are in place. It's not that people don't want to buy homes, right? There's a lot of systems that have been in place for a long time, and so we can battle those down. 1934, and I just have to say this because I always want to make sure we understand something specifically about this. 1934, the Federal Housing Administration, FHA, was created. In 1935, redlining was implemented. And so every time there's a gain, there's a setback. But we were able to overcome that. It took, for the first 35 years, only 2% of all FHA mortgages went to people of color. And so when we look at where we are today, it was systemic. We understand that. And so now that we understand that collectively as a coalition, what do we plan to do about that? And I think that's the greater question that we can all ask ourselves.
I love that framing. And I just want to come back to you, Kiana, and talk about how the Business Leadership Council uses coalition as one of the most powerful business coalitions in our city. How do you do that? And how do you do it in the way that changes systems?
Well, Mayor, you know all too well how we do that because we've been able to unite on many fronts. We frequently talk about when you walk into certain rooms, you want to have a level of confidence in recognizing a familiar face. We're human beings, and that's what we're drawn to. We're visceral people, so you're inclined to look for a familiar face. But we have to make sure we elevate our level of consciousness beyond who looks like us, but who has a shared commitment to the caliber of outcomes that we want to see. And so I've been fortunate to be in spaces and places with you, Mayor, and when I walk into the room, the temperature lowers because I know that I don't have to put on my full armor because I know that I am there with another freedom fighter. But to your point,
that's right.
The Business Leadership Council makes it very elementary because we have enough complexities. So I call it the ABCs of the BLC. 1A is we're advocating for access. And we know that that was very much of what our ancestors fought for, whether it was the end of slavery, the right to vote, fair accommodations, and now we're at that precipice of full access to capital. And we're seeing even our democracy being compromised. The B is about building bridges to overcome systemic barriers that keep us marginalized intentionally. And so it's not enough for us to just recognize that they exist, but what are we doing collectively to overcome those? And so it's conclaves such as this, when we have leadership over the next 3 days that represent a range of organizations and industries and elected officials, we have to make sure that we're working in concert with one another. Our splinteredness creates vulnerabilities that we need not have. We need to conserve resources. We need to make sure that we are having a common agenda that we're putting forward even to our elected officials so that we have a policy plan that can speak to and create the caliber of change that we want to see. And the C is real simple. It's about cultivating a culture of collaboration. And when I say culture, we know that we have to really make sure that we break down some of the barriers that we present even to ourselves to demystify working with one another. So even in this auditorium, I promise you, your next business partner, your next investor, your next consumer, maybe your next even romantic mate, if that applies to you, could be in this room.
Right here.
But the only way it happens is through engagement. So we have to make sure that we're not getting together just for the sake of getting together. It has to have meaningful outcomes. So I just encourage us all to utilize the Rainbow Push tent as a space for us to make sure that we are organizing the movement and we have actionable items coming out of this conversation.
And I think inherent in what you're saying, thank you for that, is that it shouldn't matter who's in charge. Jeremy, I want to come to you and I want to talk about collaboration in a different way. We were just talking about it across organizations. Let's talk about it because I'm just eyeballing it, but I think you're the youth on the stage. Let's talk about that, about collaboration among and across generations. Would you talk about that a bit?
Sure. I think one of the best things a young professional can do coming out of college or any type of program is to engineer opportunities for themselves. And what I mean by that is it's proximity, right? You need to go places where there are people that look like you that are emotionally invested in your success. I say emotionally invested in your success. They have nothing financially to gain by whatever it is or whoever you become. They want to see you do well for the sake of seeing you do well. I had the privilege, thank you. I had the privilege of working at a firm here in Chicago called Vistria Group, and it was started by a gentleman who lives in this neighborhood, and you all probably know him as Obama's best friend, but his name was Marty Nesbitt. And at Vistria, sure, I learned how to be a great investor. I learned how to model financially, how to build and grow businesses, but I had the emotional backing of Marty Nesbitt. And for my career, that meant more to me than anything I could have picked up from a technical skill set. And so to explicitly answer the question, it's proximity. You have to engineer opportunity for yourself. You have to align yourself with people. They always might not look like you, but they care about where you're going, and they have nothing financially to gain. It's all emotional. So the proximity piece is very important.
And inherent in that is that those of us who are in the more experienced class, that's my new word for senior, we have to make sure that we are creating that proximity for those in your generation and other generations that are coming up. Is that important?
Sponsorship over mentorship, yes.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. As we talk about solving for barriers, how do we interact in a way at the larger corporate level to ensure that our corporate friends are still engaged in this fight? We're here at Push, right? We know we're fighting. But how do you get people in boardrooms to still engage in that fight? That is something that Reverend Jackson was really, really skilled at doing, whether it was among automobile dealers, whether it was in Silicon Valley. How do we do that today? I'm going to start with you, Kiana, and go to Ashley on that.
So I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but those of you who have studied the evolution of Rainbow Push, it started as Operation Breadbasket with the intent to advance economic mobility. And so from there, Reverend was very thoughtful to create the Wall Street Project, which was all about challenging corporations to live up to their value system and to pay homage to their stakeholders and shareholders. And guess who they are? It's us. Black consumer power is at over $2 trillion. Trillion. And so when we recognize the influence that we have, it causes our posture. We sit up a little different. We have a different level of response to the process. And so as we've seen the rollbacks in DEI, it lets us know that it's beyond just a statement that you put on your website, but it's the value system of companies. And so we need to be very intentional about making sure that we are investing our dollars and spending our resources with people who think like us and want to invest in us. And so a part of this movement is to make sure that while we have boycotts, which have their place, we also have to have a therefore. So if I'm not going to Target,
where am I going?
Amen.
That's it. That's it.
And so we need to make sure that the commodities that exist in our communities are then showcased. And so a part of what the BOC is working with the Chicago Urban League and with the Rainbow Push is to create a buying guide so that we are arming our communities with a blueprint so that we can harness our collective buying power for the good and to make sure that we demonstrate just the fact that there's a proposition that is beyond charity, that's beyond being in vogue, but it's the value of who we are and what we bring to the overall conversation and how we create a legacy of institutional wealth for our communities.
From a boycott to a boycott.
That's right.
Love
Exactly.
that. Rapid fire, we got the high sign. You guys saw it too. Ashley, the one thing that folks in this room can do to pursue economic justice either as an individual or through their organizations?
I'll make it quick. I think we need to become more comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. The truth is piercing, and why am I going to sit here and not speak truth to power and allow someone to continue to do devastating things in my community, but I don't want to make them uncomfortable. I don't want to seem radical, so I don't say anything. And then I look up 20 years from now and I wonder what's going on with my future generation and why my son can't buy a home or my daughter can't go to this school or we having challenges with medical. And that's anyone. So anyone that challenges to tear our community down, we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable in the conversation.
Thank you so much for that. Jeremy?
I think
The
it's
one thing.
What I said a moment ago, it's sponsorship over mentorship. There are too many industry leaders who are just that, industry leaders, and that's the extent. We have to extend our hand and we have to help the next generation.
Thank you. Helping the next generation. Thank you. Kiana, you got the last word? Actually, I do, but I'm going to give you the last word on the panel.
Reverend Jackson said, we do business with people that we know, we like, and we trust. And there is an explicit connectivity to business and economic mobility and our democracy. So as you engage in these conversations, make sure that you are getting to know, like, and invest in people and politicians and policies that are going to be friendly to advancing our prosperity and enhancing our democracy.
Pursue the interests that pursue us. In closing, I want to thank the panel. Please give it up. Ashley Thomas, Kiana Barrett, and Jeremy Jordan. And just say that as you leave this place and this conference, remember we are all in this together. And if you're not a part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashley Thomas III, Kiana Barrett, Jeremy Jordan, and the Honorable Karen Freeman Wilson. Let's give them a hand. Audience, are you ready for Secretary Hillary Clinton? She's in the building. Please welcome Zion Ali.
Fire, 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 fire. Just out of curiosity, how many people seen The Wiz? Raise your hand if you've seen The Wiz. Raise your hand real quick. Fire. Awesome, awesome. So I played the Tin Man and The Wiz a couple of years ago. There's a special ballad that touches my soul. It's called If I Could Feel. Can somebody say the song? What's it called? Fire. So every time I point at you, I want you to say the word what? What's the word? What's the word? Now this time I want you to look to your best friend, your neighbor, whoever you came with and say, what? What? Okay, I think y'all got it. We got this. This song reminds me that we're all human. We can go ahead. This song reminds me that we are all human. We're all in a world filled with imperfect people, but we still serve a perfect God. Right on? So let's go ahead and do this song. Let's go ahead. Okay, you ready? 1, 2. Depend on y'all for the second what? Let's try it. Let's go. 1, 2. What I do, na 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 na. If I could reach inside of me, no, 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 no. Let it go. How it feels. Just say I like what I see. Then I'll be more than glad to share all that I have inside of me, and the songs that my heart might bring. Ooh, you'll be more than glad to sing. Oh, and if a tear came to my eye, think about the wounds they were made. And just to think, oh, the time I can spend, feel wonderful. Come on, yeah. So tell me what would I do? So tell me what would I do? Hey, so tell me what. If you ever been through something this year, I don't care how small, put your hand up and just snap. You got it. You snapping is a reminder of you coming out of that dark place. So if you know you got the victory, do me a favor and say these 2 words. Come on. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Say, ooh. If I could feel. Make some noise for yourself because you came out of that dark spot. You at a better position. Let's go ahead.
Hey,
Some of y'all look a little tired, but it's my job to get y'all shaking. So do me a favor, look at your best friend, especially if they sleep. Tell them, say this real quick, say this. Say, get up, get up, get up. Come on, you got it, tell them. Don't be shy, come on, tell them. Say, get up, get up, get up. You got it, come on. Come on, don't be shy. Tell them, get up, get up, get up. You got it. Hey. Say, get up, get up, get up. Come on. Everything, stressing over bills, trying to buy the finer things. So, child, you gotta keep your head up. Can't nobody steal your sunshine. Can't nobody steal your joy. Just take it one grab everything. I'm a free human being with the heart of a king. Got a crown on my head, it don't mean anything. Cause everybody, anybody, people just people. Even when you different, you know everybody feel. You can be like anybody, riches to the poor, but you ain't gonna win. Look at your best friend. Tell him, get up, get up, get up. Come on. You gotta, you gotta, you gotta, you gotta say, get up, get up, get up. You got up. Come on. Say, get up, get up, get up. You gotta come on, say. Do me a favor. If you know you're gonna soar through all 2026, put your arms out and say this. Say, oh yeah. 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 Make some noise for yourself because you're gonna get up. No matter what nobody say, you're gonna get up. Rainbow push. Somebody say I am. Somebody. I am. Somebody. I don't care what nobody say. I am. Somebody. Make some noise for yourself real quick. Rainbow push. This ain't a one-time thing. This is a forever thing. Make some noise for yourself. Okay. I think we got time for one more. Can we get stronger or something? Let's get stronger real quick, but while they setting that up, I like to perform at schools and stuff like that, and it makes me really happy when I can get y'all to engage. So let's see if y'all really got y'all moving. Simon Says raise one hand. Don't, you better come on. Simon Says raise one hand. Simon Says raise the other hand. Simon Says clap one time. Clap. What y'all doing? What y'all doing? Okay. Y'all think y'all got it. Simon Says clap one time. Clap two times. What y'all doing? I do this with third graders. Okay, it's okay. We got it. Do me a favor. Say this. Keep on getting stronger. Say. So keep on getting wiser. Keep on. So keep on feeling better. Keep on feeling. You're feeling so much better. Let's go ahead and kick it off. This song is called Getting Stronger. Let's go ahead and do this. Keep on getting stronger. I don't care what you at. Put your hands on. Come on. Hey, so keep on getting wiser. Come on. Keep on feeling better. Hey, yeah. You're feeling so much better. So much better. So much better. Come on. I've got to move. Can't afford to waste no time. Come on. Hey, hey, come on. I gotta focus 'cause it's me that is on the line. This what you gotta do if you wanna make it this year. Check this out. You gotta keep your chin up. You're a winner, never gonna give up. Don't forget it. You gotta finish what you started. Come on. You're gonna hate it. Don't you take it. You gotta make it look easy. Do me a favor, look at your best friend and turn them on today. Say this real quick. Keep on getting stronger. So keep on getting wiser. Come on. Keep on feeling better. Hey. You're feeling so much better. So much better. So much better. Come on. You gotta breathe in. You gotta see that you're the chosen one. And all boy, you got to know that you got to act like you have already won. Let me remind you real quick. You gotta keep your chin up. You're a winner, never gonna give up. Don't forget it. You gotta finish what you started. 'Cause people gonna hate it. Don't you take it. You gotta make it look easy. One last time, look at somebody you don't know. Make uncomfortable eye contact. To keep on getting stronger. To keep on getting wiser. Keep on feeling better. Hey, you're feeling so much better. So much better. So much better. Do me But I'm gonna remind you, you're more than a conqueror. You got this. You gotta give it to them. You're a winner, never gonna give up. Don't forget it. You gotta finish what you started. Come on, 'cause people gonna hate it. Don't you take it. You gotta make it look easy. You gotta make it look easy. And I know it ain't easy. Come on, one last time, put your hands on it. Just for yourself, just for yourself. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Hey. Make some noise for yourself because you became something amazing, something you thought you couldn't be. I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you so much, Rainbow Push. My name is Zion Ali, Zionali. Do me one last favor. Make some noise because you showed up and you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Let's give Zion Ali another great big hand. Let us remind everyone to please silence all cell phones at this time. Please silence all cell phones. Also, if you are not a member of the Rainbow Push Coalition, we invite you to register and join Rainbow Push today. Everyone, please welcome Pastor Otis Moss III.
I want to share with you that Sister Hillary Clinton is running a little bit late. She will be with us. Secretary will be with us very soon, and I want to share that first with you. But I want to share a couple of things with you. I want to find out some information from those who are here. Who here knows a person by the name of Peter Thiel? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Put your hand down. Have you ever heard of Palantir? Heard of Palantir? Okay, put your hand down. Has anybody here heard of ChatGPT? Has anybody used ChatGPT? All right. Well, let's first start with Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, who is the chairperson of Palantir. Palantir, which has one of the largest government contracts in and around surveillance. That we now know that ICE is using some of the technology that Palantir has produced to be able to surveil people who are all across the United States. Why is this incredibly important? Because Peter Thiel, also a person who comes out of South Africa, is one who has been supporting this information. One of the conversations that we have not had is a conversation in and around technology and how the algorithm is being utilized in order to marginalize our community. And there is an entire growing group of tech bros, these tech bros in Silicon Valley that do not want to see democracy thrive. It is what is now known as techno-capitalism. Techno-capitalism is the word that we want you to know, techno-capitalism. And the company Palantir is at the front of pushing these ideas. And so we want you to know that information. You're going to hear more about some of the policy initiatives that we're going to be talking about here at Rainbow Push. One of those pieces is going to be how do we shape policy in and around AI. There is a wonderful book by a sister by the name of Ruha Benjamin entitled Race After Technology. Race After Technology. Put that on your book list. One of the things that we need to understand is that if the coder has racism in their consciousness. The algorithm will have racism as a ghost in the machine. Let me say it again. If the coder has racism in their consciousness, then the algorithm will also have racism in the ghost as in the machine. And so these are things that we're going to be talking about coming on Saturday, along with some other policy pieces. We want you to be aware of the things that Rainbow Push is going to be talking about. Not just about voting and voting rights, but we're going to be talking about AI. We're going to be sharing about how do we shift and change the Supreme Court. We're going to be talking about things on a local level and also a national level. What you can do in your local community and what you can do nationally. We're going to be talking about data centers and the effect that data centers have on our community, not only in terms of raising the prices of electricity, but also draining fresh water in our communities. These are important issues, the policy issues. Some of them may seem kind of nerdy, but we want you to know about the policy issues that here at Rainbow Push we're going to be talking about. So I'm going to ask that those in the back right now, you all put on a little bit of music right now. I'm going to check and see when our next guest will be coming, but get ready. We're going to have a wonderful fireside chat between Yusef Jackson and none other than the Honorable Hillary Clinton. Thank you very much.
Yes, this is the gift. Yeah, baby.
All right, is everyone ready? Mrs. Clinton is in the building. She's moving this way. Can she hear you? Make some noise if you're ready to see Secretary Hillary Clinton. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for our President and CEO, Mr. Yusef Jackson.
It's my great honor to welcome someone. Can you turn this down? Lower. It's my great honor to welcome someone who truly needs no introduction, but who deserves a grand one. For more than 5 decades, Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton has been one of the most influential public servants, advocates, and leaders of our time as First Lady, United States Senator, Secretary of State, presidential candidate, and lifelong champion for children, women, and families. She has helped shape some of the most important conversations of our generation. Long before she held public office, she dedicated herself to public service, working with Marian Wright Edelman and the Children's Defense Fund, advocating for children and families, and building a career grounded in the belief that government can be a force for opportunity and justice. Of course, many of us know her for her historic leadership on behalf of women around the world, including her landmark declaration that women's rights are human rights, a message that continues to resonate across generations and across borders. For the Jackson family, however, Secretary Clinton is more than a distinguished public servant. She and President Clinton shared a decades-long friendship with my father. Together, they navigated some of the most consequential moments in modern American history and worked to expand opportunity to strengthen democracy and bring more people into the American story. As we gather for our first annual conference since my father's passing, I can think of few better people positioned to help us reflect on the legacy of that generation of leadership and the work that still lies ahead. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Hello.
Everyone's going to get a picture. It's all right. Everybody be cool. All right, let's have a seat. Thank you for coming.
I am so happy to be here. I'm sorry about the weather. I know people are stuck in places like Washington and New York that can't fly out, but I'm thrilled to be part of this gathering, and I'm so happy to see all of you.
You know, I thought this would be an easier task than it is turning out to be. Obviously, this is the first time we've seen each other since my father's funeral. And when I guess when we were in the back, seeing you in the office space that he shared kind of brought forth some memories of him. You know how much he loved life. You know how much he loved your husband. He loves your daughter. He loves you. And at one level, the Jacksons and the Clintons did so much work in the 90s and 2000s that, you know, our legacies are shared in many ways. And I want to thank you. I remember so many nights at Camp David, bowling and having fun. And some of those were tough times for the country and for the family. And we stuck together. And in that sense, we became a unit that you can't break apart. So I want to thank you for the love and caringness that you've shown my father, my mother, our family, and thank you for being there. When my dad was sick and couldn't speak, the Clintons came to the hospital to see him, and he opened his eyes and tried his level best to speak. He wanted to hold a political conversation. He couldn't, but you held his hand, you prayed with him, and you stayed as long as you could. Thank you so much. So given that, you know, I kind of want to just start with somewhat of our shared legacy. We did so much together with voting rights, and you did so much with universal health care in the 90s. You helped us open up the Wall Street Project. Can you just share some of the memories you have of Reverend Jesse Jackson and what the shared Jackson-Clinton legacy will be?
Well, you're absolutely right, Yusuf. Our friendship with your father and your mother go back far before Bill was president. Goes back to the 1970s, which seems like another time so far from us. But it really was forged in, I think, my husband Bill's commitment to doing what he could to work with allies like your dad to provide more economic opportunity, which is why what Push did and the kind of emphasis on creating more economic mobility was so resonant with both of them, but also to find ways to keep telling the story of progress and what it took to get to where we were and what it was going to take to get beyond. I don't think in the 1970s and 80s or 90s, either your dad or certainly Bill and I thought we would be facing a concerted effort to turn the clock back on that progress. Because for both Bill and your father, you know, they grew up in the South. They had a lot of similar views about what it was going to take to really break the bonds that had kept people behind for so long. And, you know, I remember when Jesse came to Little Rock to speak at, you know, the famous Little Rock Central High School. And Bill was governor, and he introduced him, and he gave just this incredible speech to the young people gathered about their potential, their opportunity, the need to work hard. And he was particularly, you know, focused on don't waste your life, don't use drugs, don't drop out of school. I mean, he gave a tough love message, and it really resonated with the students. And, you know, he and Bill really bonded over that. Like, how do we get people to realize that, yeah, the deck may be stacked against you in some ways, but that doesn't mean you give up. You get up and you keep going and you keep trying. And I think Jesse Jackson, you know, really epitomized that.
Thank you. It's so true. That time was so hopeful. And that's kind of what brings some of my frustration today, and I want to share it with you. It seemed like we really all wanted to build a better democracy together. And we had put in place certain infrastructure to build that platform, that foundation through which we were hoping no American could ever fall beneath. And it seems like within just months, the administration has been able to dismantle the work that we did. I'm not going to say to dismantle all of the great work we did across civil infrastructure and civil rights, social justice, but they've done a lot of damage to it. Did we not build it properly? Or what made it so ephemeral that it could be destroyed so quickly?
Well, first of all, I think we're fighting today the same fight we have started, that we have been engaged in since the country started. You know, there are forces at work in human nature in this nation of ours who don't want to see everybody get ahead, who don't want to see rights expanded, don't want to see everybody included. And they have, you know, been there working, but we kept overcoming them. You know, I mean, we had to fight a civil war, and, you know, we had all kinds of sacrifice for people who, you know, had to overcome so much slavery and oppression and the kind of organized financial and political interests that we had to fight. And I felt, coming of age, you know, when I did in the 1960s, you know, when my husband did and your dad did, that, you know, we had so many of the building blocks finally in place. You know, we did have the Civil Rights Act. We did have the Voting Rights Act. We had a Supreme Court that was on the side of justice, not privilege and power. And we saw what that would mean, the doors that would be open, the opportunities that would flow. But the forces against that never disappeared. You know, they were kind of kept quiet, or they were off, you know, on the sidelines, but they never disappeared. And slowly, unfortunately, over time, they gained more power, they gained more leaders who actually catered to the worst of our nature, not the best. And so the fight is the same fight. The struggle is the same struggle. And I think it's really important, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come, not only to see your mom and give her a big hug, but also to remember your father. We have to reconstitute a new civil rights and social justice movement.
All right.
You know, the odds that are against us right now are not as steep as they were against our forefathers and mothers. They overcame a lot more. We just didn't expect we'd have to be doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? So when I look at the time we're in, and I think about the civil rights movement or the women's movement, you know, movements that moved us forward, that made it possible to claim we were trying to get to that more perfect union, they were not led by political elected officials. They were led by the clergy. They were led by business leaders. They were led by civic organizers. They were led by young people. So we don't need to have a bunch of elected officials leading this new movement.
That's right.
We need to have it be from the bottom up, the grassroots, coming back to get organized and move forward again.
So I'm going to challenge that a little bit, because I say that the pre-1965 world, you saw the bloodshed, you saw the dog, you saw the state power turned on innocent students and people. I was born in 1970. And my children in 2008, 9, and 10. The post-1965 crowd has never seen that before. And so how do you give that group hope? Because they never really learned what it took to fight for the rights in the first instance. One of the things we've been working on at Rainbow Push is making sure that the beneficiaries of the civil rights movement respected the fact that the advocates of the civil rights movement made rights available for all of us. And so if the beneficiaries now take the fight on to teach their children, we can teach civil rights through the generations. But we don't do that. And it's harder because the post-1965 group never saw Dr. King get shot, never saw Medgar Evers, we never saw Jamie Lee Jackson. We never saw that. And so what's your message to the folks who have been born on second base, but they woke up and thought they hit a double?
That was good. That was good, Yusuf. I think it is up to all of us to figure out ways of telling that story that connect with young people's lives today. And that means that it's not just what worked in the past. It's not just filling our churches. It's not just marching. It's not just having rallies. I think all those are important. But it's also doing more work to communicate on social media, because young people are literally on their screens. That's where they get their information. And if there is nobody who is putting forward the argument about why does it matter that the United States Supreme Court just gutted the Voting Rights Act? Why does that matter to you? Why does that matter to you? You're 18, you're 20, you're 28, you're working, you're in school, you're living your life. Why does that matter to you? We have to do a better job in modern language, using modern communications to tell the story that motivated your father or that inspired people like me coming up.
I think it's also we've not taught them how the democracy was made. I mean, democracy is much that of Dr. King and John Lewis and Jesse Jackson as it was of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. You know, your husband taught me something, I say it all the time, a Thomas Jefferson quote, "The price of liberty is eternal vigilance," right? And so I think what we've learned throughout this day is, as Pete Buttigieg said, is what makes you think you don't have the obligation to fight? Every generation in this country has had to fight, and yours is no different. And you've just made it very clear that our fight is not quite as hard as it was before, quite frankly. You know, I think that's a poignant thing to remember. We do have to fight, but it's not the fight that our forefathers had by a yardstick, right?
You know, when I was, I think I was 14 years old, I was living in Park Ridge, Illinois. I was born in Chicago, but I grew up in Park Ridge, and I was a member of our Methodist Youth Fellowship at my Methodist church, and my youth fellowship, our youth pastor, took us to hear Dr. King speak at Orchestra Hall in New York, in Chicago. And we went on a Sunday night. You know, we got one of those rickety church vans, had to get permission from our parents. And we went down, and he delivered a speech that has been called Staying Awake Through the Revolution. And it had such a huge impact on me because he was basically arguing there is a revolution going on right now. It's a revolution for our rights. It's a revolution for a fairer economy. It's a revolution for justice. Stay awake. Don't get lulled into a false sense of security or think it doesn't apply to you or that, somebody else can do the work. I remember I stood in a long line after the really with a sermon, but after the speech was over, in order just to shake his hand and to meet him. And, you know, that just was such an impactful experience for me. We are in another revolution, but it's a counter-revolution to the revolution that Dr. King was describing. It is a revolution to turn the clock back. It is a revolution to take away the rights that we have worked so hard to achieve. It's a revolution that enables those who are in power right now to fire well-qualified black and women admirals and generals and military officers who have earned the right to be promoted, and they are not, because this particular counter-revolutionary crew in Washington right now doesn't want us to be a rainbow nation, doesn't want us to have the kind of vision of a country where we all have a place. So let's stay awake. And how do we do that? I think we do it by educating ourselves, but particularly young people. We do it by new ways of communicating why it's so important to pay attention. Because, you know, it's like the boiling frog. You drop the frog into the cold water, you turn the heat on, and slowly but surely the frog gets boiled. Well, you turn back rights, you fire qualified people, you use hateful language, you dominate the information ecosystem with angry people who are on podcasts and broadcasting information that is negative rather than hopeful. So we have to get ourselves organized. And, you know, PUSH has been there through such a long period of time, and the mission is the same, but maybe the strategies and the tactics have to change.
Looking ahead to the midterms, what should we be doing to strengthen our democracy, to take the White House back or take the Congress back in November?
There is nothing more important than turning up and voting. There is nothing more important. And I think what the Supreme Court did on the Voting Rights Act to make it more difficult for people to vote and more difficult for them to vote for people that they wanted to represent them should be a rallying cry. I mean, I believe that the voting opportunities we're going to have in this midterm election. You know, now, you know, you live in a blue city in a blue state. I live in a blue city in a blue state. But we still should turn out and vote because the numbers matter. And the message coming out of the numbers matter. And then we have to do more to help people who are in less favorable political situations to get out and vote. You know, I honestly believe if you carry through what they're doing to try to undermine voting, they're trying to kick people off voting rolls, they're trying to demand, you know, forms of identification that most real people don't have, and most older people and most rural people don't have. They're certainly redistricting to make it difficult to elect black representatives or Latino representatives or Democrats. So that means we have to be even more intentional in showing up and voting for people that are going to fight for these values. So when I look at this midterm election, I would love to see as big a movement as we can put together in a relatively short period of time to repudiate these efforts to make it hard for black voters to vote, or young voters to vote, or Latino voters to vote, and just really convince people with every argument and every mobilization strategy we can use, they've got to turn out and vote. That's the most important thing right now.
So the Reverend built the Rainbow Coalition with the belief that lasting progress happens when diverse people, when disenfranchised communities come together around common ground. Can you talk a little bit about why coalition building is still essential today?
You know, it's a fact that diverse groups make better decisions. You know, if you only have the same people in the room around the table making the decision, you're not going to get the benefit of diverse experiences and expertise. And this current group of people, particularly in Washington, but, in some state capitals too, they only want to see a reflection of themselves. They don't want to see anybody who's different at all, who has a different experience. And we've got to keep insisting that we be in every room where every decision is made. It's Shirley Chisholm, who's one of my favorites. Shirley Chisholm once said, you should have a seat at the table, and if they don't give you a seat, pull up a chair. That's the mentality that we need to be promoting.
As a former Secretary of State, you've represented this country on world stages with world leaders, probably many of the leaders that you see today. Do you believe that we can ever regain our stature back, given how we're managing foreign policy? It was different when you were Secretary of State, right? You manage it differently than what we're seeing right now? Yeah. Do you think we can ever regain our stature?
I think if we elect the right leaders to the Congress and then to the White House in 2 years, I think we can. But we've done a lot of damage to ourselves. We have undermined the trust that our allies need to have in us. We have given a lot of comfort to our adversaries because they see us flailing around. We've just launched a war that we're losing, and it is so incredibly sad to me that this effort by the current president against Iran is unmoored from reality. I was on the Senate Armed Services Committee. As Yusuf said, I was Secretary of State. Every time we talked about Iran, and we talked about Iran a lot, the idea that you would launch military action and not consider that they would close the Strait of Hormuz, you can't make it up. It's the first thing that was ever mentioned in any conversation. The idea that you could bully Iran, a theocracy that believes in its religious vision of what the Islamic Republic is supposed to be, is just unmoored from history. This is a country that fought a 10-year war with Iraq, and by the 10th year, they were sending 10-year-old boys to the front line. This is not a society that's going to be intimidated by Donald Trump. So I don't know how we get out of this. We got ourselves into a big mess. Well, he got us into a big mess. And we're going to have to figure out how to get out of it. But it's just one example of the incoherence and the unintelligent ideas behind our foreign policy and the failure to plan and implement in a smart way. So we're going to have a lot of repair work to do.
Let me ask you, and I'm going to ask you a kind of a backroom, situation room question. When you're thinking about going into these kinds of conflicts and you assess the cost of the war, the cost of the conflict, do you think about the impact that it has on domestic programs and domestic policy from a financial perspective? And can you talk about what the danger we're facing in these endless wars on our domestic policy and are able to finance things right here for our own people?
Well, I certainly think you should, and many of the conversations I was in, we did. I was a senator from New York when we were attacked on 9/11, and we were just overwhelmed by the impact of not only the 3,000 souls that were murdered, but the horrible damage done to Lower Manhattan, and how we were going to get people, helped by providing them, the support that they needed. Many of them lost their major income earner. A lot of them got sick. I mean, we had a huge amount of problems that we had to face. So, of course, you should think about how that impacts. And in this current situation, gas prices are going up, and food prices will go up even more because of the lack of fertilizer that is getting shipped through the Strait of Hormuz, and other supply chain problems. So it just makes common sense. But if you have a leader who surrounds himself by people who will not tell him the truth, and he only wants to hear what he wants to hear, even though it is wrong and will be harmful to us as well as others in the world, it's really difficult to make smart decisions. And I think that's unfortunately what we're up against. You know, the damage that he has done to our institutions, to the rule of law, to our sense of unity as a nation, to our belief that, you know, e pluribus unum, out of many come one. I mean, he doesn't believe any of that. And so part of what we've got to do is elect leaders who have the heart of a servant leader, who are understanding that they have to serve the people, and that by serving the people, they will help all of us, you know, find a way forward that is going to benefit the country. That's what I'm looking for.
So you do believe we have enough left to fulfill the American commitment to its people, for the Native American, for the African American, for the woman, for the Latino American, for the immigrant? What gives you that belief that we can do it?
Well, I really believe that it's a matter of will. And if we don't have the will, we won't do it. But if we can summon the will again to start treating our fellow Americans according to the golden rule, which I always thought was the best political strategy, you treat others as you want to be treated, and guess what? People feel empowered, and they feel like we can work together and we can make a difference together. So I'm not naive. I know that there are lots of interest groups who don't want us to make progress, who don't care about how many of our fellow citizens are suffering right now. We have tens of millions of Americans who cannot make ends meet. They can't afford, you know, rent and gas and food and, you know, childcare and all the things that make up a good, solid life. They can't afford it, and they are taking a wrecking ball to health care costs. It is going to be a nightmare. By the end of this year, when Medicaid is cut dramatically to give tax breaks to the wealthiest 1%, hospitals are going to close, people are going to be denied health care. So if you don't care, then, you know, it's very hard to convince you otherwise. That's why we have to beat them in elections with people who do care. And then those people who do care have to come together and develop smart strategies to actually make a difference.
And when we're in office, do you think we do enough to fortify the foundations through which no American should ever fall, we being Democrats? Do you think we do enough to fortify the foundation to which no American should ever fall so that we don't ever have this problem again? Like, for example, the constitutional amendment to protect the right to vote.
Yeah. No, I think that we probably took too much for granted. You know, it's hard to fight all the time. You get tired. You know, your dad traveled nonstop for decades, you know, delivering a message, working with leaders, making things happen. It's exhausting. And you feel after a while, why do I have to keep telling people to be good human beings to each other? Why do I have to tell people that, you know, we're stronger together, don't divide us? And so I think it's fair to say Democrats were like, well, we did that. You know, thanks to the prior generation, look at what we got accomplished. And what we have to remind ourselves is there's always that group out there that wants to turn the clock back. And we've got to take them into account because they have power, they have money. They're not a majority by any means, but they are a determined minority. And a lot of times a determined minority can beat a kind of lackadaisical majority. Because if the majority is not protecting its interests and its rights and its values, they will lose to a determined minority that wants to change things.
Thank you. Let me change direction just for a second. You know, you served as First Lady, U.S. Senator, Secretary of State, and presidential nominee. And I'm old enough to remember that no one ever gave Mrs. Clinton anything. And I'm not sure you ever caught a good break. But you've had a phenomenal career, and you've served faithfully our country, and you've... Nothing about your career was given and nothing begat something else. So if you had to give advice to a young leader who wants to make a difference, but they're uncertain where to start, what would you offer?
I think the first thing, if you want to, there are lots of ways to make a difference. It doesn't all have to be a difference in politics. You can make a difference in a church. You can make a difference in a business. You can make a difference in a grassroots civic organization. You can make a difference in a professional setting, in a school, as a teacher. There are lots of ways to make a difference, and you have to decide what it is that fills your heart, that makes you feel like you have a purpose to do the work you're doing, whatever it is. But if you are contemplating going into public service or politics, go in with your eyes wide open. Politics has always been a contact sport. It can be very difficult, and you're going to be attacked and undermined and everything. So you have to know what your why is. Why are you doing this? Why are you willing to go into that public arena? You know, for me, it was always children. My first job was with Marian Wright Edelman in the Children's Defense Fund. And so my why was, what can I do to help kids who aren't getting a fair shake in life? How can I do more to level the playing field for, you know, poor kids, minority kids, kids with disabilities, neglected kids, the whole range of kids who didn't have the best circumstances in life and deserve so much more. So know that why. Because that'll keep you going no matter how hard the times are. You know, when you get knocked down, you got to get back up. And sometimes it's hard to get back up. If you think you're getting back up just for yourself, that's not so easy. But if you think you're getting back up to help somebody else, that can motivate you and get you up faster than you might just on your own. So honestly, know what your why is. Be prepared. Study what you're interested in. Maybe you're passionate about affordable housing. Maybe you're passionate about health care. Whatever it is, know what you're talking about. And, you know, that was like your dad. He always studied stuff. You know, he was a great speaker, as we all know, but he also knew what he was talking about. And he also studied how other people spoke. So he learned how to weave together an argument. And he had great turns of phrases, and he relied on scripture and poetry. So know what you want to do, know what your why is, study up, figure out how you can be most impactful, and then learn how to communicate. And some people are better communicators than others. Maybe you're great in small groups, maybe somebody else is great on a stage. Figure out what works for you. It's like any other effort. You have to prepare, and you have to practice, and you have to get back up when you're knocked down and disappointed. But I have found my time in public service, you know, even without being an elected position, back when I was working just for the Children's Defense Fund or working to improve education in Arkansas, the kinds of things that I did before I ever ran for office, I loved working with people. I loved finding common ground with people. I loved finding solutions for problems. So that worked for me. That was my sweet spot. And then when I got into elective office, I did the same thing. I mean, you see a problem, how do you bring people together to try to solve it? So I still think that the future is absolutely a positive one if we make it. We can't just sit back and hope for the best. We have to work. We have to get up every day and go to work. And, that's hope for the best, but plan for the worst. You got to figure out how to protect yourself and protect your community, but then you have to have a positive vision. So I see the tide turning, Yusuf, and I think if we do our part, we can take back our country. That's what I'm convinced of.
Well, the secretary's allowed us to have a little treat. We can ask just one question from the audience. Just one question from the audience. If you have a question, you can ask just one. Who else? We got any? All right, come on. Let's give one right here. Right here. We got a mic out there? Curtis, don't kill me. Shout it out. I'll sell it to you. I'll say it for you. One question. Yep.
Yes. Considering what's all going on in the country, how do we, because it's more disenfranchised than folks doing all right, so how do we bring them into the fold to make things get better for everybody?
How do we bring the disenfranchised Americans into the fold so they can feel better about being an American?
That's a wonderful question, because that should be our objective. We want to lift everybody, not just some of us. We don't want to become like them, but coming from another direction.
Yes.
We want to try to open the gates of opportunity and provide as much pathways through for as many people as possible. I'm a Methodist, as I said earlier, and John Wesley had this old saying, do, all the good you can to as many people as you can for as long as you can. And I think that needs to be our mantra. I think there's several things. I think our existing institutions have to once again become community centers, organizing hubs, reaching out and helping others come in who would be left outside. I think our churches need to get the spirit of Dr. King again. And I think if we can figure out how to get that spirit back, and all of our houses of worship, but, thinking particularly being in a church, how do we get our churches to see the social justice mission? Yes. And realize that there's a lot of ways to bring people in, by providing services, by providing safe spaces, by making it clear that everybody's welcome. We also need the organizations like PUSH, which is what is happening today, to keep reaching out and hear new voices, particularly young voices. A lot of young people, as Yusuf said in the very beginning, they have no idea of the history. And I don't blame them. They weren't taught it. It's not on their social media feed, so they don't get it. They don't have a TikTok saying, I'm Dr. King, although I think we should, and here's what I believe should be done. I am serious. I think we need to take our civil rights leaders, our social justice warriors, our women's rights advocates. We need to figure out how to translate their messages into language and in places where young people will see and hear them, so that they can enfranchise themselves. They're feeling like they're left out, they're left behind. Young people feel like there's no future, there's no jobs, that nobody wants them. AI is coming. That's going to make it even harder. So we've got to just step up and do more to make it possible. And when we vote, register. The best rebuke to the Supreme Court is to register every single American and have the highest turnout we've ever had, with people who are disenfranchised today, but they will be enfranchised if they realize their vote is just as important as mine or Yusuf's or yours.
Mrs. Clinton, you're always welcome here. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for taking time in your schedule. Give the secretary a round of applause, please. Show her how much you love her. Her family has sacrificed, and we thank her so, so much. Thank you. Bless you. I know we have another panel coming up, but I see Reverend T.D. Jakes is in the audience. I think, are my eyes deceiving me? There's a doppelganger or something out there? Hey, Reverend, how are you, sir? I see Reverend Otis Moss out there. Thank you so much. Let's hear it again for Senator Clinton.
Can we give Secretary Hillary Clinton a big hand, a round of applause? Please do not leave. We still have panels and other information for you. Please keep your seats. We will be coming next with the Advancing the Legacy Civil Rights Leadership in Action panel. It's going to be moderated by our President, Yusef Jackson. Derek Johnson, President and CEO of the NAACP, is here. Attorney C.K. Hoffler of the C.K. Hoffler firm and chair of Rainbow Push will be our moderator. And Miss Angela Rye is going to be on this panel. And do not wait, Governor J.B. Pritzker is on his way. Please keep your seats. Enjoy the music. We will begin again shortly.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can take your seats, please. I know we're excited and energized. So, we've talked about the fact that this is the first Rainbow Push conference that we've ever had in the history of all of our organizations where our fearless leader, our founder, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, was not here in person. We've had incredible panels. We just heard from Secretary Clinton. Can I have everyone's attention, please? I want to bring up our panelists for our last panel of the day, which is entitled Advancing the Legacy of Civil Rights Leadership in Action. So, ladies and gentlemen, when the history books are written about civil rights, about human rights, about trailblazers, certainly they're going to talk about Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. We're going to talk about, those books will talk about his vision, we'll talk about Rainbow Push Coalition, but they're also going to talk about Derrick Johnson, the president and CEO of the NAACP, who's one of our panelists. Please welcome Derrick Johnson. Exceptional, extraordinary attorney, president and CEO of the NAACP. Omega Psi Phi, I might add. But also, the history books are going to talk about Reverend Siobhan Arlene Bailey, who's the president and CEO of the National Council of Negro Women. Bad to the bone, exceptional, extraordinary. Oh, yeah. Do we need to introduce attorney Angela Rye, ladies and gentlemen? Principal and CEO of Impact Strategies. She's a dynamo. We've seen her all for years and years in the media speaking truth to power and never once allowing people to silence her. Now, when we talk about one of the youngest members of the U.S. Congress ever, who you've heard about earlier, that would be none other than, I call him Congressman Harold Ford. One of the youngest congressmen ever at 26. And then finally, our president and CEO, the one and only incomparable attorney Yusef Jackson. So we're going to get right to this. This panel is entitled Advancing the Legacy of Civil Rights Leadership. Now, Reverend Jackson was a proponent of the Rainbow Coalition and proponent of addressing issues head on. We have heard about that awful U.S. Supreme Court decision in Louisiana versus Calais that gutted the second, we talk about the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. Louisiana versus Calais just put like the nail in the coffin. And the NAACP, Derrick Johnson, you all have taken a really interesting position, a dynamic position, where you're calling on college athletes and actually high school athletes to take a position as it relates to the SEC states and those states that are disenfranchising black voters through gerrymandering and representation. What do you say to that, Derrick Johnson?
Thank you, CK, and thank you all. Yusef, we are here to support you to continue this legacy. Immediately following the Supreme Court decision, the southern states went into action quickly to redraw the political boundary lines to minimize black representation in Congress. This is significant because over 52% of all black folks live in those states. And the effort now is to handicap African American voting power by half. The appropriate response, as we've seen it, was an economic response. That in these same states, now that this is the law of the land, they depend on their flagship state-funded universities to generate revenue on the back of black athletes. Our position is clear. If they don't want your voice in public policy making, we should not be generating profits on the field for those schools. And the campaign isn't to say not to play sports. We're saying if you're being recruited by those schools, LSU, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, those schools, you're also being recruited by Illinois, Ohio State, Michigan, UCLA, Oregon. Choose wisely. Leverage your platform. Sharecropping is over. We also recognize that this fight is now a marathon. That once the Supreme Court has spoken, it can take up to 10 plus years before this decision will be reversed. So we don't expect to have an impact tomorrow, but we are saying to families, not the children. I'm a parent. I don't want anyone talking to my 17, 18, or 19-year-old graduating high school senior. We're talking to the parents. We're saying that you need to invest in all of your child. Don't send your child to places where they're not seen as total citizens and full human beings for profit. Make sure where they decide, if all things being equal, 10 factors, make this the 11th factor. Send your child somewhere else. They're going to get more NIL money. Why? Because those southern schools, they build their schools off auto dealers. The Big Ten, they build their schools off auto manufacturers. There's more money in the North anyway. And so our campaign is called Out of Bounds because the immediate appropriate response is economic. It's not speeches, it's not protests, it's sustained economic pressure.
Well, thank you for that. So, Angela, the Congressional Black Caucus actually blocked the SCORE Act. So name, image, and likeness. We know that these college athletes get paid buku money. That's what we used to say back in the day. Millions and millions and millions of dollars for their name, image, and likeness. I know because I have 2 college football playing children. Yusef played football in college back in the day at UVA, as did his dad, as did Jonathan, as did Jesse. So when the CBC was able to block the SCORE Act, which was an act governing NIL that they felt was oppressive or didn't quite go far enough in protecting the athletes, what power do you see, having worked in all areas, especially with your relationship that you've had with the CBC, do you see the CBC exerting at this moment as it relates to NIL and the issues that Derek Johnson mentioned?
Thank you so much for that question, and good afternoon, everyone. I also just want to shout out Yusef for a really amazing conversation with Madam President. She's the only woman who's ever won the popular vote. So I'm going to call her what she is, Madam President Hillary Clinton. This is a really, really brilliant conversation, Yusef. For this moment, what I think is really important is we have to think outside the box. What Derek just mentioned about sustained economic pressure, that requires us to exercise a muscle that we have, I think our generation has never really had to do. We've never really had the discipline to do that. What I loved about the conversation you just had, Yusef, is Hillary Clinton mentioned a determined minority. And what you saw with the actions of the Congressional Black Caucus shutting down the SCORE Act is that a determined minority can, in fact, do anything it puts its mind to. It is called the conscience of the Congress for a reason. The SCORE Act was just one pillar. What we need the general public to understand is the folks who are whining at Derek and the NAACP saying, why would you take this opportunity away from this young person? The young people they're talking about has several opportunities with colleges all over the country and not just with the SEC. Why aren't you whining to the members of Congress that seek to pass a SCORE Act that would take away the name, image, and likeness deals that folks have fought so hard for? So my argument is the Out of Bounds campaign is not the real threat. The SCORE Act is, and certainly the CBC doubled down in that effort. Now, that is one pillar. The other thing that the Congressional Black Caucus has done over the last couple of weeks is sent letters out to corporate America. You all will recall when George Floyd was killed companies found their consciousness, right? They realized, oh, Black lives do matter. And in fact, this is a brilliant marketing plan because we can get some more revenue in if we say Black lives matter. You'll see that they said, oh, you know what? We actually can hire these executives like Reverend Jackson has been pushing us to do for 40, 50, and 60 years. All of a sudden, they knew what the right thing to do was. I don't know if y'all ever been in a bad relationship, but it sounded a lot like a bad relationship. All of a sudden, he starts saying everything you've been telling him for a long time. Maybe that's just me. So anyway, the CBC sent a letter to corporate America, those that said they were business for voting rights. And they said, what we need you to do in this moment where our voting rights are under attack, there's an all-out assault on our voting power, stand with us and say, you believe what you said 5 years ago. Be true to what you said on paper. And what we're finding right now is there are companies that have individuals who look just like me and you in there. And some of those folks who are just like me and you in there are saying, oh, boss, you don't have to send that message. You don't have to put that statement out. That's a problem because they're starting with voting rights. That's not the end of the matter. So we need the Out of Bounds campaign. We need corporate America to say that they stand with us for voting rights, because if they can't just make that statement, then we've got to make a bigger one. And that means holding our dollar for our dignity.
Hello. Now, each of you has worked alongside Reverend Jackson at one moment or another in a point in time. I'm going to address this question to the incomparable Reverend Siobhan Arline Bradley because of the work that you do, the coalition building that you do. What do you think is the most important lesson that you learned, that you play forward when you think of Reverend Jackson's many lessons that he taught us over the years?
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here on this panel of folks that I care for dearly. And to think about Reverend Jackson's legacy, for me personally, my family's from South Carolina originally. And I remember the first time I had a chance to meet him, I was on staff at the NAACP as a young staffer. And one of the first things he taught us, I was a young minister. And he was the most progressive preacher I had ever met in the civil rights movement, because he believed in the value of a woman's voice very, very early when it was not sexy at all. And what I loved about Reverend Jackson was that he instilled in those of us that were young organizers was that it just takes one person to open their mouth to start a movement. That it did not take a lot of people around the table to have to make a decision. That you have enough inside of you from wherever you sit to be able to make change. I think the second lesson I really learned from him, quite frankly, was the ability to understand marketing. He knew how to tell a story better than anybody I knew. And the story that he told very closely with NCNW was he worked with Alexis Herman, who was the past Secretary of Labor, who we just lost last year. They were front and center to ensure that black people had access not only to fair labor laws, but also family and medical leave. That work was done with Reverend Jackson and Secretary Herman. So he taught us to be able to access our jobs, access our capital, but also to prepare for families to be in place. I think one thing that we do need to walk away with, though, in this moment, is if Reverend Jackson could speak to us now, I do believe he would say that the end is not yet. That he would encourage us that the fights that we were fighting were really not about us. It was about the decades that were coming after us. And I believe that in this moment, we are fighting for my 10-year-old, for our babies that are even unborn, the way that the ancestors fought for us. I believe Reverend Jackson taught us to envision, see it before you see it. Because if you can see it before you see it, then our future will see it too.
Amen.
CK, can I answer that a little bit as I think about it? You know, I've been involved in a lot of conversations since this Calais decision.
Yeah.
And I think there's an instinct for African American people to kind of rein in the components of the family, the churches, the civic organizations, our Divine Nine organizations, our civil rights organizations. And I think that's critical. But that is the beginning of the conversation. That's not the end. Reverend Jackson would tell you that your quilt piece at 14% is simply not big enough. We have to find a way, one, to corral our home team to make sure that our family's on the same page. But then you've got to go out and build coalition. You got to build coalition with labor. You got to build coalition with churches. You have to build coalition with working class white people. We got to build coalition with Jewish coalitions. You have to build coalition because we have more common ground together than we do the things that divide us. It's like they're cultural issues that people use to divide us. The economic issues are common. We're all having trouble at the pump. We're all having trouble at the gas station. We're all having trouble with their housing valuations. And so there are more issues that we can unite around than the cultural issues that divide us. And so Reverend Jackson would say, you have to focus on building coalition. Don't just turn internal, but really reach out and find something that you work with someone on more so than you're disagreeing with them on.
Absolutely. You know, to our fearless leader, Yusef, we must be on the same page, because my question to you was going to be about change. Change in the courts, change legislatively, change in culture. When we see the coalition building and when we look at the people on this panel, what can you say to those out there listening in terms of what they should do in concrete terms, in terms of coalition building to bring about change from the exact situation that we're experiencing today?
Let me talk about the first thing. So we have 4 distinguished members of a panel right now, 5 with the moderator. How much time do we really spend working together? And if you extrapolate that across the other civil rights organizations, if you extrapolate that across the Divine Nine, if you extrapolate that across Jack and Jill, if you extrapolate across that across our churches, we aren't on the same page. And we must be. One of the wonderful things about our church is that we have sort of an independent Protestant situation. But the bad thing is that we're independent Protestants, so we don't preach the same message every week. And at this time, as we approach the end of a Reconstruction, we kind of have to have some more common ground covered at home. The last time we were in this position, I'll call it 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson. 1900, James Weldon Johnson writes, "Lift every voice and sing." A unifying theme to celebrate Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And then we built all kinds of institutions to survive the nadir of Jim Crow. All of our Divine Nine is formed through then, 1906, 1908, 1911, all of the NAACP, Urban League, all of these organizations, NCNW, 1935 and 1938, Jack and Jill. So our culture built organizations that were, in the last to this very, very day, built organizations to survive culturally, economically, and politically. And we have to do that again. So these organizations have lived. There may need to be some new ones, but really we have to re-strengthen the bonds that developed the organizations and the intent originally, which was survival. Not to play around on college campuses, enjoying and dancing and so forth, and that's a part of it, but it was about survival and black excellence. And I think if we get back to that, we have a chance to survive what we're fighting now.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. So I'm going to call out Reverend Dr. Otis Moss. Because you delivered, I know you just can't escape us. You delivered a magnificent sermon where you talked about this issue of coalition building, and what you were amplifying what the NAACP was saying about putting pressure on college athletes and the power that they have, and that remarkable sermon. And Yusef, is just what you said about coalition building. But I want to talk about the church, Reverend, if we could. What do you see the role of the church, and piggybacking on what Yusef just said, the role of the church playing it forward in helping educate, condition, and move the message forward in addition to what we need to do on social media?
I think, the church is getting an interesting opportunity to reinvent herself. In that, people keep forgetting that the civil rights movement was not the first play of every black church in this country. As a matter of fact, many were scared to even interface in the civil rights work. If we tell the whole truth, Dr. King was kicked out of an entire conference because of his civil rights work.
Yep.
And let not be a woman who was ordained, because that wasn't even an option.
All right now.
And so I want to just think through the through line that we have in terms of the black church. The black church in and of itself is still a relevant institution for information sharing and mobilizing. And I think we got to stop talking about the church like it's not a real thing. Pew Charitable Trust talks about the African American congregation is still a highly attended space for black people. Yes, it's changing. Yes, you'll see differences. But the way ministries are moving, there are ministries that are reclaiming young people in this work that we call civil rights. So I would say that the black church now is in a reinvention mode. We have had to evolve because of COVID. We've had to open up the realities of our own misogyny and our own class challenges that we had in the church. And quite frankly, we've been doing what Jesus has been asking us to do since he was on this earth, which was flip tables, which was to respond to the social deconstruction that needed to happen. So the kind of Jesus that I serve is the table flipping Jesus, who would see systems and flip a table and say, not in my house. So I'd assume that if God was alive, if Jesus was alive right now, he would say, Calais is a problem. He would look at what is happening and say that the church has to answer the true calling. You cannot say you're the church and not feed the hungry. You cannot say you're the church and that you represent Christ and you're not activating in the streets to ensure that you overperform in voter registration. You are not the church if you are not outside of these pews. And I want to just offer, and I'm glad that Dr. Moss is here because there are some brothers and sisters who are actually aligned, who are actually fighting on the same fights. But we also got some actors and some pulpit paralysis that has people frozen. And I'm telling you, today is the day we got to liberate ourselves in Jesus for real. And what that means is standing up in the face of the enemy to say, not on our watch, because the God we serve, we won already because we showed up. That's the kind of Jesus I serve.
All right. So we have to liberate ourselves in Jesus for real.
That's right.
Okay, so Angela, I'm going to ask you this question. Reverend
She's a preacher
Jackson.
too. Yes, preach for you.
Okay. Reverend Jackson often reminded us that civil rights and economic justice are inseparable.
Yeah.
Inseparable. So as the wealth gaps widen, and we're seeing this, and economic insecurities grow, how should this movement that we're thinking about, all that we're discussing, how does this movement be, how should we think about this in terms of economic opportunity as a civil rights issue?
Well, first, let's start with something very basic. You asked a question about coalition building. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason we need to talk about coalition building in this moment is because, again, 5-6 years ago, our issues were very popular. Now, all of a sudden, people have financial amnesia and don't understand the importance of funding this work. So the coalition is also necessitated by the fact that all of these different organizations doing work along the lines of similar missions and objectives can't all be funded. Certainly can't all be funded at the rate that they should. So there's a necessity in coalition. Yeah. I think the other piece is, it's foolish of us to think that this work can get done for free.
Come on.
True.
It is foolish of us.
True.
It costs money to put this conference on. It costs money for people to crisscross the country and go and advocate for and with you. It takes effort and resources, whatever brain power somebody put, on the line to develop a strategy. That's a resource they spent not being able to do something else to earn. So we frown upon this work. I think what's really unfortunate is when we look historically at our civil rights leaders, people are like, well, they got a nice car, they got a nice suit on. Why do you want somebody to look like a bum? I know that's not the politically correct term. To fight for you. They're not even going to be, the door's not going to be open for them because we are a very vain people, especially in this country.
It's true.
So I think that we really have to talk about the necessity of coalition building, even around resources. The other thing that I want to say is we spend a lot of time focusing our people in particular on Election Day. There's nothing wrong with us wanting to ensure that we get out the vote, that we turn out like we never have before. It's the most important election of our lifetime. But if we only mobilize people towards November and never any other day in between, that means people are taking time off. It's time off that we can't afford to take off. You look at what happened with Carmelo Anthony, that's not just about an election. That is about systemic, historic oppression, white nationalist ideology that has to be dismantled. We cannot focus all of our efforts just on Election Day, just on whether or not you run, just on whether or not there's a ballot initiative that you can support. Your civic engagement, your black voting power, your black civic engagement power has to be motivated and moved throughout the year, not just in November.
All right. So Yusef, what you are doing, what we're doing, what we're all doing here, we're not starting from scratch, are we? We're not starting from scratch. We're building upon the decades of work that Reverend Jackson and others did over the years, right? But for those who feel that our organizations are fragmented, because there are a lot of people who feel that our organizations are fragmented, are not reaching the people, are not reaching out to young people, what do you say, and what is your plan to reach out to young folks?
You know, thank you for that, Sikia. They're misreading the moment. The fact of the matter is we're doing great work every single day.
All right.
All the churches are doing a lot of great work. The civil rights organizations are doing a lot of work. We have to coordinate more for sure. I'm not going to be down on the great work that we do. Trinity United Church of Christ is a fantastic religious institution that's doing amazing work. They're sending kids to Africa every year. They are training. They do teaching every Sunday morning and Wednesday. There are a lot of organizations doing a lot of great work. The issue is racism affected every state, every county, every city, every aspect of our culture, every politician. All of it was closed to us. Sexism affected every aspect of American life. So to penetrate these institutions in these spaces, Brown versus Board of Education has not even reached places in Texas. 75 years later.
Yep.
I mean, some people, it was kind of funny. I'll laugh about my dad sometimes. It seemed like my dad kind of went everywhere and did everything, was always in all the places. He had to confront and challenge the law. Once you change the law, he had to challenge the culture in all of those places. In music, in sports, in NASCAR, in every sport, NBA, MLB, the churches. We just talked about the churches didn't want to be in the civil rights movement. There was a lot of challenging to do to run for office, to give people hope and to let them understand that they have everything it takes to be successful within them, and then to go out. Secretary Clinton just taught me something about enfranchisement. We talk about disenfranchised people. You have to enfranchise yourself. You can't expect someone to not disenfranchise you. Power concedes nothing without a struggle. No one's going to not disenfranchise you. You have to enfranchise yourself. And so we're doing a lot of work. So the folks who say that the churches and civil rights organizations aren't doing enough, you need to enfranchise yourself. How many of these organizations do you carry a rainbow push pin? Are you a member of the NAACP? Are you a member of any of these? Do you talk to Angela on a regular basis? Everyone here is available to you. How much are you reaching out to participate?
Can I jump in on young people?
Absolutely, absolutely.
The fastest growing membership group in NCNW is 19 to 24-year-olds. And the beauty of that is because of, I think, three things. I think, one, young people have been in the game. What they've been looking for was a jolt, a push.
Yep.
Someone to give them space to be able to make decisions at a real table. I think the other two things that are really important about young people in mobilizing is that young people, once they have a goal, you got to let them run. And to be able to lead campaigns on the ground is what has helped us grow. Our campaign, Power Up, Ready to Vote, has caused 16 states across the country where every state has at least 3 universities that are starting their plans for their school registration on campus and back at home. And I think it's a beautiful thing because particularly young women and the brothers that support us, we can have young men that also support us. We have created an opportunity where young adults understand succession planning is a part of our plan.
Yes.
And you cannot have young people if you don't expect them to be leading you one day. So that has really worked tremendously for us. And I think about our founder was Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. She mentored Dorothy Height. So her whole context was about bringing in younger people to take over. We're not going to be here forever.
That's true.
So there's got to be a 20-something out there that's getting ready, getting groomed, and we got to have a lot less ego and a lot more push to get them into these places. That's how young people land, and that's how they win. And that's what we've been able to do.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask the same question to Derrick Johnson. You know, Barbara Arnwine earlier said the math ain't mathin'. The math ain't mathin'. So what are you seeing as President CEO of the NAACP, and how is your outreach to the next generation? Because I know it's loud and clear, but I just want you to share with our audience what you all are doing.
So I often sit on panels and listen to the discussion. I kind of smile because we too often talk from a deficit mindset. We talk about what we don't have, what we're not doing, how it's not happening, when in fact the evidence and the history shows differently. In ACP itself, we have over 700 youth units across the country, youth councils and college chapters. We're the largest container of youth activists in the African-American community, and we have been for a long time. Angela came through the Youth and College Division. Siobhan, let's get out of the deficit mindset. The real question in this moment is, we have a problem that we're confronted with. How do we bring ourselves together and come up with a solution? The movement was never led by the majority. It was a few people who took risk, and the majority followed on the back end of it. Our coalition has always existed. I commend Angela because right after the election, she called for a meeting in Baltimore, and over 100+ leaders of organizations sat around a big open square table to talk about how do we coalesce in this moment, looking at the threat that we're confronted with. We moved around the country and began to have town hall meetings to talk to people. It wasn't organizational centric, it was community centric, and allowed for all of our organizations to come together and listen to our members, to listen to our communities. The black church isn't a monolith. One more time, the black church has never been a monolith. In fact, this misnomer that the black church led the civil rights movement, no, they didn't. You had a few courageous pastors and a lot of courageous parishioners who said this is enough. I live in Mississippi. The movement was not led by pastors, it was led by the mother board, the usher board, and the deacon board. Most pastors in the state wouldn't allow there to be a meeting when Medgar Evers showed up because they didn't want to be identified. But it was the people who led movement. Key point, our movement has never been vested in a personality. It has always been vested in collective interest. Our community, we have historical memory. Naeem Akbar called it collective consciousness. That's why 92+% of us, we vote the same way before we wake up in the morning. We react the same way when we hear about a crime on television. We say, I hope it ain't one of us. I hope it ain't one of us. That muscle memory is who we are. We are the conscience of the nation. We are confronted with a problem. Our opportunity now is how do we come around the table and define the solution and the pathway there. Final point on this. There isn't a singular solution, organizational, individual. The movement as we know it took many people to assume different roles depending on what part of the country you lived in.
Yes.
The dynamics you were confronted with, and oftentimes it wasn't people with the titles. Fannie Lou Hamer didn't have a title. And in the midst of a debate of whether or not to have a freedom summer or not, when the students were debating and Ella Baker was sitting back in the corner, they had this debate. They said, we don't want these white folks to come to Mississippi. And someone said, we got to have them. And then when everything was said and done, Fannie Lou Hamer says, Charlie, you ain't from Mississippi. We let you come. In the discussion, freedom summer as we know it. Yep. So let's lean into our surplus, our history, our collective consciousness, and our ability to solve problems, and not the deficit mindset that we far too often fall into.
Thank you. So, as we bring this panel to a close pretty soon, I want to give each of you all the opportunity to speak, not just to those in the audience here, but to the thousands of people who are tuning in nationwide and globally, as Reverend Jackson would do. When we talk about coalition building based on class, based on race, based on faith, labor, business, geography, building those coalitions. And we're going to start with Angela Rye. Because of all the phenomenal work that you have done and continue to do each and every day, what do you say to those people who are feeling some kind of way? Because when they wake up in the morning and watch TV, they're feeling so disenfranchised and disgusted and oppressed. What do you say to them in terms of what we need to do going forward?
I think we have to work through our pain. This is a moment that requires us all to do something. There's a gift, there's a talent, there's a contact you have, there's a particular calling, something that's nudging you in your spirit to do something. Yeah. Listen to that. Heed that call. We spent a lot of time talking about coalition building up here. we are, I think, more in conversation and talking more than we ever have. Last spring, I started something called State of the People with people on the stage. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I hope you're clapping for yourselves. Talk more to Pastor Otis Moss than I have ever in my life, but part of that is making sure that we are all in conversation about what to do next. I think the one thing that we're missing, since the church has been brought up so much, thanks to my good sister, the Right Reverend, we have forgotten that part of our role in movement building is taking care of people's basic needs. You don't just go and ask someone for a transaction. You don't just ask them to go and show up for you. What do they need, right? And you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Do they have clean drinking water? Do they have food? Do they have a place to lay their heads? That is the most important ministry that we can offer. It is that type of service. So when the people who are at home are watching the oppression, they should be asking themselves how they've contributed to it by turning a blind eye. It is about to get real cold outside, y'all, and I'm not talking about a seasonal change.
That's right.
SNAP benefits are about to be cut even more. Medicare and Medicaid is about to be cut even more. What are the mutual aid networks that we've developed to ensure that our people will be okay, and how are you participating in that? Maybe you have a vacant rental property. Maybe you have a good relationship with the food pantry. Maybe there's a shelter that you're in connection with. Maybe you're a skilled nurse or a doctor and you can offer free services. Pretty soon, we will be there. This was not just about your voting rights. This is about a mass disenfranchisement campaign. I know it sounds deficit-y, but I don't want us to be caught flat-footed when real oppression comes. That is what they desire, and we have everything we need, again, as a determined minority to fight against this. I do want to shout out one person in the audience who is also working diligently to build coalition and to find all the resources where they are, and that is Sophia King. I hope you'll stand. Sophia, thank you for, don't roll your eyes, sis, just stand up and wave for me, please. Thank you. She's doing amazing work here in Chicago to ensure, again, that our people aren't caught flat-footed. So don't think that folks aren't working on this. Like Derek said, we're waking up with the same idea. It's not my brilliant idea. Everybody else had it at the same time. What are you going to do with the idea that you have? Put one foot in front of the other. That is what we've got to do in this moment.
Thank you so much. And Derek, I'm going to ask you the same question. What pearls of wisdom, you've already given us so many, but what pearls of wisdom can you leave this audience and those tuning in with about what we need to do going forward?
You know, many of you who said, if I was living during the time of the civil rights movement, I would have fill in the blank. You're living in the time of the civil rights movement.
Right now.
What are you doing? All right? The beautiful thing about the constructive tension conversation Angela and I have is that we're willing to get into that space of tension and challenge each other. And we always come out of the conversation with a different approach. We have to get into the space of getting into conversations to create some friction. As a black community, we think a little friction in the conversation, all y'all do is argue, you run from it. No, we got to run to it, because in that friction, my piece of a solution with your piece of a solution and your piece of a solution is the solution. And then final point, as we scan the landscape and recognize the pushback that we're getting, is because we're winning, not losing. People would not be willing to destroy this country if we were losing. We're winning.
That's right.
And so let's embrace that surplus mindset and begin to think through, how do we continue to push forward? Angela's correct and wrong at the same time. That friction. It isn't about election, but it is about election. At the exact same time. It's all about mutual aid, but mutual aid depends on an election. That decision in Texas had nothing to do with an election, but you can't be on a jury if you ain't registered to vote and participate in an election.
All right.
That the money that we're talking about, the number one driver of economic wealth is our tax dollars. You showed me a prosperous Corporation, I show you a corporation that's living off our tax dollars. Walmart, they pay their workers so little that they qualify for public benefits. FedEx, we got to pave the road for the trucks to go by. American Airlines, we pay for the air traffic controllers. You name me the company. Oh, Microsoft, we invested in the research at MIT and at Stanford that created Microsoft and all of the tech platforms. It is about an election because the election is about who gets taxed. Who's not taxed and what they spending those tax dollars on, and they're not spending enough of our tax dollars in the things that benefit us and in our community. So, yes, Angela is correct and wrong at the same time.
Friendly amendment because you started a debate, CK. I did not say.
So this is our weekly conversation.
This is a normal.
This is our weekly conversation.
Hold on. I just want y'all to know.
All the lawyers.
I did not say it's not about an election. I said it's not just about getting to November.
She's correct.
She did say
So don't let this disinformation campaign spread.
I'm going to be the one to say, because lawyer to lawyer to lawyer, she did say just.
She did. She's correct. She's right.
And so, but I do have a follow-up question for you. What do you say to these athletes, Derek, who tell you, look, I don't want to get into this. I'm trying to go to the best place I can go and get as much money as I can so I can change my family dynamics. The parents are saying the same thing. What do you say to them? Specifically, these athletes that are making all that NIL money and who you're encouraging and urging to look at the states who have an abysmal voting rights record and who are disenfranchising black folks every day. What do you say to them?
I say Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Colin Kaepernick. I mean, it can go on and on and on, right? When you leverage your platform, you are benefited much more than when you don't.
And they don't want to be the sole ranger like Colin Kaepernick. So what you're talking about is en masse.
But let me be clear. Colin Kaepernick has made more money than he would have ever made on the field.
Right.
That Nike contract alone is greater than what he would have made on the field. So they say, I don't want to be sacrificed. No, you sometimes you take a step back to move forward, and we're not telling anyone not to take a risk that's overburdened. We're saying leverage your platform because there's a community when you do that.
Okay. So I just wanted to now, the National Council of Negro Women has always been that organization that many women, not just women, but many women have looked to for leadership because of the incredible work of its leaders and now the incredible work that you are doing, Reverend Siobhan Arline Bradley, in this country and elsewhere. Also, we talked about the Jack and Jill, we talked about the Links, we talked about all the different organizations, and you're a healthcare expert as well. What do you say to the women who are feeling disenfranchised, who believe they have less rights than their great-grandmothers had over their bodies? What do you say to them, and how do you play it forward for all of those people who look to you all to find solutions?
I think to the women first, I would say you nurture and give life to every space you walk into. And sometimes you do not understand your power because you've been told you have none. When in actuality, the gift of womanhood is that you can walk in and life starts. You create space as soon as you walk into a space. And I think that the disconnect is this. For every brother that was out front, there were a whole lot of women that were carrying this movement. For every church that is prospering, there's a whole lot of women that are ensuring that it's still alive. And to black women specifically, I do want to say to you, you are not a fad. I'm over this over-commercializing of black women. You bad just because you woke up.
Hey.
You've got God, you've got access, you've got vision, you've got tenacity. You're the most educated person in the United States of America. You're the number one leaders in business ownership. You are a woman. And nobody can do nothing about that. That is why you are a threat. That is why over 300,000 of us have been either displaced or removed from a workplace, because you are the existential threat to what those in majority see. Educated, economically endowed, and politically astute. And what I'm saying to women, don't get off the track. Keep running that race. Because that is the race that created the Ketanji Brown Jacksons, that got us the Kamala Harrises. But it was born by the Mary McLeod Bethunes. I would also say for those that are struggling, we constantly talk about this in faith, about no weapon formed against us shall prosper. And we get caught up in these verses and never read all the context of text. Luke 12:48 is one of my favorite verses. To whom much is given, much is required. But the verse continues. If you've been given even much more than that, even more is demanded of you. What more did God give you that you're not working on? What business should you have opened? What action plan should you have taken? I want to offer us in this moment our creativity, our innovation, our attention, and our community is going to get us out of this. Because the end is not yet, because you woke up. And that's the victory.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm told that the governor is here, and I know that we're running a little behind, but I've got to say this. This panel was entitled Advancing the Legacy, Civil Rights Leadership in Action. Our leader, Yusef Dubois Jackson, is the personification of that legacy. And so, Yusef, we say to you, as we leave the stage, you keep on keeping on, knowing that this coalition, all of us have your back, have your front, have your side, every which way, because you are, by definition, the personification of that legacy and the fulfillment of the American dream. So on those words, I could, preach about Yusef. We want to say thank you to everyone. And thank you so much for sharing this day with us. Oh, pictures. Okay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, baby.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay seated for Governor J.B. Pritzker. He's coming right now.
Wait. Kelsey. Everybody, we're almost there. We have a very special guest who was able to make adjustments in his schedule, so he deserves our time and attention. He has been an outstanding steward for our state, for the distribution of resources. Our next speaker is someone who's not only led the state of Illinois through challenging times, but has done so with a deep commitment to expanding opportunity, protecting rights, and investing in people in this state. Governor J.B. Pritzker has established himself as one of the nation's leading governors and one of the most consequential voices in public life today. We dare not take his leadership for granted. Under his leadership, Illinois has made significant investments in education and infrastructure, healthcare and economic development, working-class families, while standing firm in defense of civil rights, voting rights, and the fundamental freedoms that many have fought so hard to secure. But what makes Governor Pritzker especially meaningful to the Rainbow Push Coalition and family is not simply his public record. He's been a friend to the organization and a friend to my late father, Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. He has stood with us, he's marched alongside us, and consistently demonstrated his belief that government can be a force for justice, opportunity, and inclusion. At a moment when many of the values we hold dear are being challenged and undermined and undercut, Governor Pritzker has not hesitated to use his voice and his platform to defend those values and to remind us that progress requires both courage and action. I don't think there is a person not in the room who's in the room who wasn't proud of the way he stood up for our state and our city when ICE agents were around the city of Chicago wreaking havoc in our neighborhoods. You give Governor Pritzker a round of applause for his leadership, for his partnership, and for his friendship. Please join me on your feet in welcoming warmly the governor of the great state of Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker.
I love you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you very kindly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Yusuf. Thank you. Great to see everybody today. Thank you so much for that very kind welcome. And I just want to say, Yusuf, thank you. Thank you for providing leadership in this moment here at Rainbow Push at such a critical time in the history of this organization, in the history of this country. It truly does give us all genuinely great comfort to know that you are bringing your experience and your determination and your courage to carry on your father's extraordinary legacy here at Rainbow Push. So thank you. Now, I really am glad to be right back here at the annual conference for Rainbow Push. I'm proud to say, appropriately, I drove on the soon-to-be renamed Jesse Jackson Memorial Highway. And look, folks, in these uncertain and turbulent times, I'm really grateful. I'm grateful to everyone here who has chosen hope over fear, even in these most challenging days for our republic. It feels like reading the news these days it takes an act of courage. The White House and Congress have fallen into the hands of grifters of false pride, purveyors of bigotry and hatred, spelunkers for misery. And their aim is to enrich and aggrandize themselves, and to do it at the expense of the powerless and the most vulnerable. Families are being deprived of food and health care and housing so that Trump's thugs, and I mean thugs, can hand out contracts and tax breaks to the wealthiest and the well-fed. And the corruption runs so deep that it touches the very core of our democracy, the right to vote. Blood has been shed, lives have been lost to secure
the right to vote, for representatives who share our lived experience. And we are now witnessing the culmination of a decades-long plot to dismantle that right, to disenfranchise black voters and constrain black power. Let's be clear about this. When new legislatures convene in 2027, there will almost certainly be fewer minority members than before. It's a diabolical attack on representative democracy, and it's an insult to the generations that marched and sacrificed for voting rights. The attacks on pluralism are manifesting in other ways, too. A cross was burned in Grant Park just the other day. The very symbol of the KKK and the alt-right. Here in one of the most diverse cities in America. Our state government won't stand for it, and I've deployed the necessary resources to find and hold the perpetrator accountable. But the fact that it even occurred at all speaks to what happens when the seeds of racism and fascism grow unchecked in our country. The threats are real. And in times like these, it's easy to fall prey to despair, to think that the fight for justice is just too costly to engage in, that the mountain is too high to climb and the path is too narrow to navigate. But here in Chicago, here in the great state of Illinois, in the land of Lincoln, we were raised on the words and actions of a leader who left us with enough inspiration for more than just his generation, more than just one lifetime. Keep hope alive, he said. Keep hope alive. Jesse Jackson was well practiced in hope. Segregation, intimidation, assassinations, arrests, struggles. Through it all, he never stopped fighting for justice. And he spent his entire life at the helm of freedom marches and arm in arm with workers at picket lines and freeing captives in foreign countries and feeding the hungry and speaking truth to power, even when his own life was in peril. No matter the struggle, he took on, the challenging and often controversial work of making the promise of our constitutional democracy real. And he made so much progress. One lifetime, especially through Rainbow Push. Think about all the people who have found a job or gotten a scholarship because of this organization. Think about all the people whose homes have been saved. Think of everyone who has dared to dream bigger and demand better because of the moral leadership of the Rainbow Push Coalition and Jesse Jackson. So as we continue to navigate what is clearly a dark chapter in our nation's history, I'm holding on to my belief in the power that one man's hope could have. I thank Jesse Jackson for that hope. And I know I'm an unlikely person. Sometimes people look at me and think, how could he believe? You know why? Because Jesse Jackson made me believe. And I'm proud to say that the state of Illinois is working each day to try to meet this challenging moment. We took Donald Trump to court to keep National Guard out of our state, and we won. And let me just say the name here of somebody who was critical in that fight that all of you should know, because he's going to be on the ballot in November, and that's our great Attorney General, Kwame Raoul. With Republicans stripping away SNAP benefits, we passed a budget that offers families that are losing their food assistance real help. When Republicans tried to strip away diversity initiatives and erase black history, we countered by increasing our diverse representation and enacting a nation-leading law to expand the teaching of black history in our schools. That's Illinois. But we're doing more than just responding to the daily depravity that the Trump administration rains down on us. Since I became governor, we've been laser focused on making Illinois a state where everyone can experience the dignity of a good job, a safe home, a good education, and the protection of civil rights, voting rights, and human rights. We have a lot of work to do ahead, but we're making progress every day in a world where Donald Trump is trying to take us backward. Since I became governor, I've fought and won on the issue of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And we won universal paid leave for every worker in this state. I enacted the Clean Slate Act, which makes it easier for nonviolent offenders who've served their time to rebuild their lives. No one should be punished after they've been punished. We've increased funding for education every single year, and we're now one of the best states in the nation for pre-K to 12 education. And if you don't believe me, go look at the rankings in U.S. News and World Report. Go look at the rankings in CNBC. Go look at how we rank. We're in the top 5 for education in the country now. We're investing in our communities, the communities that have been left out and left behind truly for far too long, bringing thousands of jobs and businesses, for example, to the old U.S. Steel plant site here on the south side, and new grocery stores in Austin, in the Austin neighborhood, and in Cairo and Venice, Illinois. And we're providing training and apprenticeships for minorities and women to work in the union trades, finally. And while Republicans are fighting to silence voters of color, we've expanded voting rights in Illinois. We've made it easier to vote, and we've elected more black members of the General Assembly. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, but Illinois has sent more black people to Congress than any other state in the United States. We should be proud. And did I mention, by the way, that as of this coming November, we're going to become the first state ever to send our, not first, but second black woman to the United States Senate, Juliana Stratton. The first state in the union to do that. You know, like Martin Luther King Jr., Jesse Jackson understood that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. But he also knew that it doesn't bend on its own. In fact, we should probably credit him for the idea that, and it's a bold thing to say, that we could maybe edit or add to what Martin Luther King said by adding that it's more than just that it bends toward justice. It doesn't do it on its own. It bends toward justice because we, all of us, help bend it toward justice. So, in these uncertain and turbulent times, in these crazy moments that we're living through right now, let's live up to Jesse Jackson's legacy. Let's follow his example. Let's keep hope alive. Thank you all very much. Thank you for having me here today.
Can we take a picture first? Appreciate it. Yeah, two things. Yes, sir. Dear friend of mine,
to teach them how to use AI. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay, love that. Thank you. Appreciate you. Yeah, let's do it. Please give a big hand for Governor J.B. Pritzker. Please join us for the international panel and convening on the second floor in the community hall. Also at 5:30.